Yes, sir.
Kwame. So, that's fine.
Oh, sorry.
Opportunity are our partners. So. Andrew said he was on his way. Andrew said he's coming.
I know it's okay. I wonder if you'll be here before. I'm not sure maybe you'll be.
Your friend is Isaac. We were London market. Me ye juma me sasa bidie ni ebro. Me ye ebro waka mu bidie waka mu. Na me use phone. Phone na me use no de ye juma pa. I na crofo hia me a o mo de frɛ me. Yetumi frɛ mo the station. Nungwa tashi labadi achimota me koyi load. Ejuma me ye no obi a hia me a o frɛ me e wo phone so. Ntimi phone ya ade bia me nkonja no ebu kura me niska kura me tumi tiwa na matare me phone e bele ma pick ya na siko size ejuma bi pio achi moto na ma fla boys na me no me yejo no na yakoyi ye kokoyi kura na se we nye skin twa ya kakura ye betumi aba obetumi da send mo mobile money mobile phone help me wa
Hey. Thank you. Hey, someone just withdrew money from my account.
Account? What account? Facebook?
Look, let's be serious. Mobile money account. Someone just withdrew money.
Are you sure?
I just got a notification.
Are you sure you don't ask anyone to do so?
No, I didn't send anyone to do that.
Hey, sir, you relax and check. Well, okay.
Telco has stolen my money. Let me call them.
Oh, Telco cannot just steal your money just like that. Okay. I mean, are you sure you did not buy anything online and you use mobile money to pay?
I didn't buy anything.
Okay, fine. How about subscribing for a service that requires mobile money deduction?
Which service in Ghana will cost you 2,000 cedis?
2,000 Ghana cedis?
I need to call Telco.
In fact, this one, let's take the police case.
Let's call Telco first.
Yes, fine. But before that, are you sure you're the only one who knows your account details?
Yes.
No, I'm talking about your mobile money PIN.
I am the only one. Who will?
Relax, take your time.
Hey God, I've been careless.
What is it?
A week ago, there's this errand boy that comes around. So he was running an errand for a colleague, and I sent him with my phone and my PIN to withdraw money from me. It was an emergency.
Huh. So you trust a stranger that much to give him your PIN?
I needed help.
You needed help? What kind of help?
He didn't do it that day.
Of course. If you had done it that day, job is so obvious. If you were a thief, would you have done it that day?
So what do I do now?
Change your mobile money PIN to prevent further deduction.
Panel members will be moderated by Richard Amuzu of Opportunity International. And the subject for conversation here will be the role of technology in education. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Amuzu, a round of applause for him.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. And thank you for having me. I know that our session is a bit heavy in terms that when people take their lunch, you need to make sure that there's a lot of activities, or else they'll forget about you. So you will try as much as possible to make it more lively and try to also make sure that it's a bit interactive. So what we will do is that instead of going on the full time, we will try to maybe reserve some time so that there can be an interaction from the floor so that we can ask questions. Because it looks like all the panel, it has been talk, but we also want to get your questions to them as well. So I will ask a few questions and leave the rest to the panel. I hope that is fine. If you agree, let's say yeah. Thank you very much. I have with me on the panel, I have the CEO of Opportunity International Savings and Loans in the person of Mr. Kwame Owusu-Boateng. Let's welcome a hand of applause as he takes his seat for us. And then also we have a school owner or a school leader, someone who holds a school, because we're going to talk about education and technology, we have someone who has experience as far as the practical aspect of education is concerned. I'm talking about Dr. Aisha Akrofi, who is also the CEO or the proprietress of Prime Academy. She also doubles as the regional chairperson for Association of Private Schools. You are welcome, madam.
Thank you.
And then I also have with me Mr. Justice King Isel. Please, he's a Ghanaian. Mr. Justice King Isel, who is also the General Secretary of Ghana Private Schools Association. Let's welcome him as he takes his seat. And another good friend of mine, in fact, you have already have a taste of him. I mean, when it comes to education and regulatory and policies, he's there, you know. He's a man of action. That is why he started giving you a bit of his action. So without wasting much time, I want to call up Kofi Asare. He is also Africa Education Watch. He is coming, yeah. So if you heard of any noise in the atmosphere, it was him. He was trying to let you have a feel of him. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
You are the man. Thank you. Yeah, so our session is really going to talk about the role of technology in education. And one of the things that really has propelled us to really have this conversation is about COVID. We realize that COVID taught us a lot of lessons. It brought, the world into a standstill, and it changed the face of everything, including education. And we could have, a whole year where there was no, academics or official learnings in the classroom. And that brought about the importance or the advent of leveraging on technology to be able to also continue learning and teaching and then continue with education. And aftermath, I think it has also, one way or the other, has come to stay. So today's discussion will be looking at, aftermath of COVID, what are the role it still plays, technology is still playing as far as education is concerned. And then we'll be looking at a lot of, interesting areas that will help us. But before we go on, I would want the panel to introduce themselves briefly again, and possibly maybe there's one or two they want to say about their field. They can just say it just briefly. So in a minute, I want to give the platform to start with Kwame to introduce himself. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yes, that's a much better response, especially after lunch. My name is Kwame Usubuating. I'm the CEO for Opportunity International Savings and Loans, a licensed savings and loans company that has been in the country for almost 20 years. Next year will be our 20th anniversary celebration here in Ghana. We serve clients at the base of the pyramid using various innovative solutions. Our focus products are in education finance, agricultural finance, using DFS as well, and client education to be able to reach out to clients who are outside the formal financial services and bringing them into the formal financial sector. To date, we've been able to grow our client base to about 628,000 since inception, and our goal is to reach 1 million customers in the next 5 years. We're also part of Opportunity Global, which is a Chicago-based registered charity that has operations in about 24 countries, serving close to 20 million customers with loans, deposits, DFS, and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Madam Asha, just briefly, because after you have already introduced you, so just briefly,
okay,
30 seconds.
My name is Aisha Asi Akrofi. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Prima Academy Limited, a private school somewhere around Abekan La Paz. I've been doing this for 21 years.
Awesome. Yes, Justice?
Yes, Justice King Isel is my name. Currently the General Secretary for Association of Private Schools, Association of School Owners actually. And so nationwide, we've got quite a presence in all the 16 regions. I've been running a school myself for many years. For almost 30 years, I've been in the education field. Own a few schools, about 3 of them. I've led school owners in the Greater Accra region, some sector of the region we call Zone 1B, before moving to the national level as General Secretary. We are trying very much to see how we can be able to use education to impact life. There are a lot of things that we could do with children, and we think that education should not just be about passing examination, but really transforming lives.
Thank you. And then maybe a quick one from Kofi Asari, just brief.
Well, my name is Kofi Asari, as you may know. I'm not a teacher. I never taught, but I have worked within the education space for the past 23 years. I did 10 years of my education practice in rural communities, very rural communities in various countries in Africa, working to understand the sociology of education. And then the next 13 years I've been within the policy space. I had an organization called Africa Education Watch, work with governments, the private sector, and civil society to improve the quality of education and its relevance in Africa. My organization works in Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Liberia.
Okay, thank you very much. And on that note, let me maybe first start from your side. Since you have a lot of experience, though you have not taught before, but you have experience. So maybe can you tell us in Ghana specifically, what is the state of the primary education, and from where you sit, what are some of the challenges before maybe we come to the private schools?
Well, to appreciate challenges, perhaps a line about progress. Ghana commits to the Sustainable Development Goals, which aims to ensure that by 2030, every child of primary school going a day is able to enroll and complete the full course of primary education and also basic education. In Ghana, junior high school is part of basic education. And our constitution, under 38(2), provides that every child of school-going age shall enjoy free, compulsory universal basic education, of which primary education is a critical component. Basically, education is delivered by both private and then public institutions. The Constitution provides for private sector participation in education provisioning and public sector participation. About 25% of our schools in the private sector are private schools. As we speak, there are about 4.5 million children enrolled in primary school in Ghana, obviously in fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goal target of ensuring that there is universal primary education by 2030. I must, however, add that in spite of this progress we have made, there are still 1 million Ghanaian children of primary school going age who are not in school, according to the Ghana Statistical Service. And so the biggest challenge we have, one, is that we have about 10% of the primary age population, that cohort, not in school because of limited investment in education. So we've not been able to access education, expand access to education equitably to ensure that all within the four corners of Ghana, irrespective of gender, geography, socioeconomic status, are able to access primary education.
Okay, thank you very much for that insightful comment and letting us know that from statistical department, 10% still there. Let me go to the private school. So maybe Madam Asha, you as being a practitioner, what is the state of maybe private education with respect to maybe the private school in terms of the low-cost private schools? And then what are some of the challenges that you face or your colleagues or, yes, in that space face?
Thank you. Let me take it from the curriculum perspective. What we were doing, what we are doing now, some differences, and then we can appreciate the challenges on ground.
Okay.
So we used to be running the objective-based curriculum, where children start from kindergarten to primary, to JHS, they write VEC examination, and then to SHS. Now we are running what we call the new standard-based curriculum. It was rolled out in September of 2019. And with this one, basic education has been redefined to include SHS. However, with its own challenges, let me give the differences first so you can understand me. We have moved from teacher-centered to learner-centered. We have moved from where we teach children to learn and write examinations, chew, pass, and forget, that's the root learning, to more activity-based. With this particular new curriculum, we are expected to emphasize more on the using of ICT as a pedagogical tool.
Okay.
And most importantly, with this new curriculum, as the kids go along, they are supposed to develop or acquire some core competencies or skills. Skills like critical thinking and problem solving, communication, collaboration. Digital literacy is one of them amongst others. But it comes with its own challenges. Popular amongst them, resources. Resources are not available, teaching and learning materials. We have, with private schools, most of us have computer centers, but the question is what kind of computers are in there, and what kind of operating systems are we using? When you study the curriculum for computing, for instance, we are supposed to be using modern computers like i3, i5. Use operating systems like Windows 10, Windows 11. Question is, how many of us, with even private, are able to do that? Also, with this particular curriculum, all our teachers must be computer literate. All our teachers are not computer literate.
Okay.
Just to mention a few, also, we have issues with teachers not being able to master the core skills themselves. You are supposed to aid or help a learner to acquire a skill in critical thinking and problem solving. Meanwhile, you, the facilitator, have no idea.
Okay.
So this is where we are. The challenges are enormous, but this is just on the ground. This is what we are facing.
Yeah, and I like the practical aspect of it. You have been very, open to us to let us know that this is what is on the ground, and I think that is an honest one. Okay, so Justice, maybe my next question goes to you. So, how do you think how is technology currently being used to impact the supply of education through school? And I know you have some quite of experience and then practical aspect of it. Can you please share with us?
So I'll begin first of all with a wake-up call after the COVID, for example.
Okay.
Quite a number of our schools folded up after that because they didn't know how to reach out to parents. And when school reopened, most of those students didn't come back to those schools. In my school, for example, one of the things that we started doing before the COVID was to start teaching the children using the projector system. Teachers prepare their lesson notes using their computers. The idea actually was that we were able to share the plans for the learning because the system we're using was that the algorithm was developed in a way that we can be able to, when you put the topic in, you can find out whatever we have and we're able to share in that space. That's what we're doing.
Okay.
And then we also started encouraging the children to begin to question what they are teaching them because knowledge is not what a child is saying. You must all agree as to what it is, so they will find out what you are teaching. They were using tablets in the classrooms, and so before we went on the COVID break. But it didn't come that easy. We found teachers having difficulty using the computer. Yes, the teacher can use a calculator to do some calculation. If you ask him to use spreadsheets, for example, to do calculation, he had difficulty. Some didn't know how to use the PowerPoint, for example, to...
The teachers, right?
Yeah, teachers, even teachers, yes. You know PowerPoint, and you have to go through a whole lot of training and to just get them to speed as to where we are going to. The cost even of getting the laptops for them, they're not ready to buy it. And once you buy the laptop and it's for the school, they don't keep it well.
Okay.
And so you find it breaking down because they don't own the thing. So when we came back, we had to change the strategy. We make the funds available to you. You buy and own the laptop. It is your laptop.
Okay.
And so you're able to keep it better. Some of the tablets that we're using before, we're thinking will be something that will be durable, but we started getting the children crashing their screens and all that. And so we saw that, no, it's better to get something that will be covered. So the laptop is better than using the tablets in this particular case. And so going back, these are things that we started doing in the space. We also try to use interactive boards so that children also can have a feel of what is happening. And we managed to connect Wi-Fi in the school space so everybody could have access to internet. So we use data to be able to access internet. We pay so unlimited. So you pay for normally we pay for a year, and then everybody access it. So wherever you are in the school, we have got routers in various parts to allow people to be able to access the internet.
And the students pay for it, or it's free?
It's free. I mean, there is once you
embedded in their school fees.
In the school space, you're able to.
No, there's no free
Once
lunch. Not
you're in the
free
school
time.
space, it's part of the general operational cost.
Of course, yes.
But because I lead other school owners, I started realizing that there were a lot of things we're not doing right. Most teachers couldn't shift away from using force to teach the children to using interest to hook them.
Okay.
Most people feel that if you use the cane and they are afraid they'll do the things. But the best thing actually to do is to make them hook their interest into learning. And when they're interested, they'll do all the things. So using such words like finding out some of their tipping points, and saying that, yeah, you are good at this, so that they're able to identify and know who they are and develop that. I think teachers have not been so good at that. So we started working on that as well to make them know that you must help the children to know who they are so that they can develop themselves better in their field. Okay. They can compete with themselves and not competing just against themselves. So they do the same exercise and time themselves, go back and do the same exercise and say, I did it better, and they celebrate themselves. So you don't have to wait for someone to say, thank you, well done, and all that. So technology has helped us actually in that space very much. We're also able to use that to also give feedback to our parents as to whether your child is in school or not, to get prompt to know that your child is in school. So as soon as you finish registering, the information just go out like that.
In what form? Is it SMS?
SMS alert.
Okay.
So the cost comes with a certain cost.
Okay.
But it's a management system that we acquire to do that job. So those are some of the things that we've been doing in our school.
Awesome. Awesome. And I guess it's also helping you with data. I mean, real-time data, accurate data on the students, on the teachers, on attendance and everything.
Yes, it does. It does at the school level. What we wanted to do more in the community is if we can have a system for the whole industry, enterprise system, so that we can be able to know what is happening in our schools. Because as we speak right now, I had my good friend talking about the number of students in school. We look at the net enrollment ratio. We are looking at the net. We are looking at average about 600,000 for each class. We are looking at about that. BEC 2021 says that about 18,000 schools registered. Out of that number, almost 12,000 of those schools are private schools. But when it comes to numbers, you see that because we have got smaller class sizes, the public schools are more. So about 40% of those who go to school in the primary sector are mostly in private sector. Awesome. And unfortunately, even though education is the right, they are supposed to get equal rights. Parents are not angry enough. The Constitution is clear that it's a right to own a school, but the maintenance of the school is your responsibility. But when it comes to the children, what they need, resources that are needed, I think that we shouldn't discriminate against them. We should be giving everybody an equal share.
Okay, thank you very much. And that, leads me to Kwame to also help us. I think you have known that the school owner have told you that these are some of the challenges they're having. Their main challenge is resources. He's also saying something similar to that. They are leveraging on technology to help the kids, adapt different approach to learning. So from where you sit, how can maybe you, as somebody in the financial inclusion space, come in to help with this gap, and how can, with your support or collaboration, make school more, education more affordable in that space?
Thank you, Richard. And clearly, what my colleagues have outlined indicates that there are some challenges that the private school proprietors are going through. And that's exactly why Opportunity International has been in this space for the past 12 years. Let me just take a step back, Richard. We started from a shaman when we started our education finance portfolio. At that time, many financial institutions were not ready to fund private schools. And we saw women that were coming together in groups, providing schools in their homes for kids who were out of the public sector. And anybody who knows Ashaman knows that access to education, the government schools in Ashaman are just few. Yeah. And this community has grown over the years with huge numbers. So these women started putting themselves together to have schools, private schools, in their homes, private homes, and they didn't have the resources to be able to increase the infrastructure. So it started from infrastructure needs. So we came in and started giving them group loans for them to be able to expand the physical infrastructure in these schools. And over time, some of them have grown to become very, very big schools in the Ashaman area. And based on the learnings from there, we realized that if we can be of help, because our mission as an institution is to see that lives are transformed. And education is the number one enabler that enables people to be transformed. So let's go into this sector and help the private schools. And that has been our intervention. Over the past 12 years, we've supported close to over 2,000 schools across the length and breadth of this country, with over 200 million in terms of loan portfolio cumulatively that we have advanced to them. Given the challenges that they have, we're already working with them. We are global, because I mentioned earlier on that we're a global institution. One of our core pillars or products is education finance. And we have a team that are delivering school leadership trainings, programs, free of charge to the private schools. And I'm sure Ginaus can attest to this fact. And this content is both for the proprietors of the schools like Dr. Aisha and co, and also the teachers, so that they will be able to have the technical skills to be able to manage the schools more sustainably. We also know what happened during COVID. Schools were shut down. How were parents able to have their kids learn something from the schools? Some schools were in operation, and the schools that were creative and innovative using technology were the ones who were able to keep their students' engagement levels going. And what were the tools that were used? Technology. If the kids have the equipment and they're able to access the school's content that they have developed to engage them, then they were able to have education actually going on. So education is about access and quality. These are the two key variables when you talk about education. And our role as a financial institution is to make sure that whatever the schools are funding in terms of technology and physical infrastructure, we're able to do it. We've done a lot in the space of physical infrastructure. The next level is to use technology to help them to bring down the cost of education and also have access improved in the various primary schools that we are working with. So specifically, computer and digital libraries are key in this journey. Some of the teachers have to be funded because they don't have, the schools may not have capacity to buy the laptops and equipment as they mentioned. And we have flexible loan products that the teachers can access. Parents also who are taking their kids to the private schools, but in times where they are unable to afford the fees, are able to take what we call school fee loans from us, so that the kids are not kept out of school because parents at a point are hard up or they do not have the financial resources to keep their kids in school. So we have all manner of products, both for the schools, for the teachers, and for the parents, so that we are looking at the entire ecosystem of education.
Okay, Kwame, maybe before I go to Kofi for the last question, I want to find out, now we are talking about the role of technology. So at a financial institution, do you also leverage on technology to be able to make sure that the schools, the parents, the teachers have access to these funds, even remotely or whatever? Is there something that you also have, or it has to be the old traditional way of coming for loan, coming for support and payment? Maybe just a minute on that line.
Thank you, Richard. We have digitized our financial services. So we have a USSD channel, *717#, and this enables the schools to be able to access their financial information and be able to move transactions without coming to our physical branches. So wherever a school is located, with this short code, you'll be able to access digital financial services. And apart from that, we have a payment platform where parents are able to pay school fees to the proprietors for them to have access to liquidity readily without going to do a deposit or going to pay physical cash into the schools where probably some of these funds can be abused and etc. So increasingly we are digitizing the space of engagement with the schools and our clients in general.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Mr. Sari, maybe my last question to you. From what you said, how are we preparing our youth to develop the skills they need in increasing technology world we find ourselves?
We have a responsibility as governments, as stakeholders in the education space, not only in Ghana, but on a continent where about 60% of the population is useful. To ensure that as we grow our population in the youthful way, the youth become productive to our economies. Ghana's population will increase by 80% by 2050. And the increase will be along the line of the youth. The continent population will double by 2050. And again, the youth are the ones leading. And so we all have responsibilities, private sector, public sector, government, and all stakeholders, that the human capital we produce should be fit for purpose. Because as we become the most youthful continent, the global leaders in the corporate sector of the world will rely on, among others, our youth to drive the global economy. Within our local economies too, because growth has proven to be technology driven, our children will also have to acquire the skills relevant to participate in a digital economy. So ensuring that our youth, our secondary school graduates especially, are equipped with digital skills, networking skills, both hard and soft skills like team building, problem solving, all those skills required to enter and participate in the world of work within a digital economy are very, very, very critical. And that is why the extent to which we adapt and infuse technology, not only as an enabler of education, but also as a culture, is very, very important to us achieving a digital compliant youth population even before we get to 2050. So it is very, very, very critical. My challenge is that, unfortunately, African governments are yet to appreciate that technology must be embraced as a culture in our human capital development process. A lot of governments see technology or approach tech as a procurement activity. Okay, and until we begin to see that technology is not a procurement activity, it is not an event. Okay, we will just spend money on pockets of technologies. Today we have internet in many schools in Ghana. Okay, if you go around the schools that train the teachers, and I'll just talk about the schools that train the teachers because that is where your teacher is trained. If your teacher is able to exhibit digital skills in the classroom, it is because they were trained in how to use digital learning systems and technologies to instruct and perhaps to assess when they were in college. If you go to the College of Education, even though on paper government has provided internet to them, for them, the reality is that for the past year, nothing is working.
Okay.
You understand? So the quality, the approach to tech should not be seen or should not be that of a procurement activity. But let's see it as a culture that's imbibed in our educational system.
Okay.
And we must build the entire system around that particular culture. Okay. Then we will be able to produce a youthful population that is digitally compliant and relevant to the digital.
Thank you very much. I think I before we started, I made a promise that I would also give the audience. So I have just less than 5 minutes. So I just want to give the floor to the audience or participants to maybe ask questions. So just 5 minutes, question for our panel. But of course, you can also draw the question to me as well. I can also answer if it's there. Oh, it's true. I'm also education finance expert. So feel free to ask me. Okay, so that, yes. So you mentioned your name and then...
Thank you. My name is Richard Dufo. I work with Opportunity International Savings and Loans.
Oh, okay.
My question is to the whole panel, so anyone who can answer. I know a young lady, her name is Lady Jemfua Dufo. In 13 years, give or take 10, she would finish university. So my question is, the people teaching this young lady now, are they able to prepare her to take on the world 13 years from now? Because the panelists indicated that the men and women teaching this young lady even lack what it takes to teach her the skills she would need to take on the world in 13 years from now. And sad to say, if our governments are seeing technology as a procurement thing, but not as a culture, then everybody here should be scared. because the men and women who are handling our children now spend 7, 8 hours on average with them. Whilst we, the parents, I'm a technology guy, I spend just 2 hours with my children. There isn't much I can teach them. But those spending so long with them, what are we going to do for them? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. But he didn't say all the teachers, please. He says some. Okay, so let's add that one. Maybe just the last question from there. Okay. I think there was a lady hands up, and then maybe they can address it for us.
All right. My name is Sylvia Tue Champon. I work with Mobile Money Limited. I just is something that bothers me from time to time. Have we sat down to look at the current system, which is the free education, and the amount of money going in, and compare it to if we embarked on online learning and inclusive, tech-driven learning? Which one will give us a better outcome? It's just a thought.
Okay.
Have we done the math, and which one? Because then it benefits the teacher, the student, and the entire country. My thoughts.
Okay. So yeah,
Richard, we have one last person here at the back, so we'll
okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Reverend Dr. Nanaya Prempe. I happen to be the first woman to start an internet company in Ghana, 1999.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you very much. When I was growing up, I didn't have access to technology. I didn't have access to mobile phone. I probably would have been building submarines by now. So the children of today, from the senior high school level, they are not allowed to use mobile phones in school. And we want our children to be techie. When I say techie, I don't mean turkey. I mean techie.
I understand.
Okay, so are we actually helping these same children we are expecting so much from? It's a follow-up to what my brother Dufour just said.
Okay.
Because I can bet you, my son is 14. He has 2 million followers on YouTube.
Wow.
I don't have that.
Maybe you were born before computer.
At the age of 14. Yes. Because, I started him off with the laptop when he was 6 months old. I started hitting his fingers on the laptop. So by the time he was 6 years, he knew everything I didn't know. So I'm advocating for the younger ones, though they have to be guided and protected from the vices of social media. What can we do as a society to improve their access to technology without opening them up to the harms that come with it? The firewalls that the schools have to put in place so the children can have more access to the digital world and still be protected.
Okay.
Now, I'm currently the board chair for the Ghana Domain Name Registries, and we are promoting the .gh shift.
Okay.
Yes, we are having issues because the children right now, all they know is .com. And we are living in Ghana, we want to promote Ghana.
Okay.
So we are advocating that everyone who owns a company in Ghana and has registered a company in Ghana should include the .gh to their URL. So it makes it easier to identify that it's proudly Ghanaian.
Okay.
Well, that's another story. But my whole advocacy right now is for our younger ones to have easy access to the www world, the World Wide Web, while we are also creating more serious security limitations for them so that they don't go into pornography. Because I know the more they do, I have a lady whose son was always on the internet. She didn't know he was doing pornography.
Yeah.
So the fact that your son or your child is spending a lot of time on the internet doesn't mean they are doing anything. So I'm very concerned about that as well. But
thank you.
We really need to know how we can help these ones so they become builders and innovators and creators rather than consumers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend. It's good indeed.
Richard, I'm very sorry I keep interrupting, but this will be the very last one. Andrew, please You can go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. So I was just listening to our dear lady speak, and I'm also very burdened on the education side. So we've entered a new millennium, right? In this new millennium, we're fortunate or unfortunate to enter with a pandemic. But the fortunate part of the pandemic is that it forced us to think from a disruptive perspective because we needed to survive. So we needed to adopt all the technology that before we didn't want to adopt because we needed that to survive. Even the way we washed our hands changed. Wonderful.
Yeah.
2-3 years down the line, models have changed. The world is changing again. But I find that we're failing to recognize from the education perspective that in this millennium we're in, we learn on demand. We learn as we go. We don't learn, store, and reproduce to qualify. And if that's the case, what is a disruptive approach we're going to use to change the foundation of education significantly and fundamentally so that our children will be, our leaders will be part of tomorrow? Because right now we're not.
Okay.
And it needs, we need to come to a place where we say the time is now.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So I think it's more similar to what the Reverend said, how to make our children more techie, right? Not the techie we eat, but more techie technology. Okay, so please, baby, if you want to take it, I mean, this one goes to you.
I will attempt some of the questions. Most are talking about the same thing, the children, the future. Let me quickly say that I was reading multiple indicator cluster survey recently. They look at various things, and I was looking at education. And I was stunned to know that less than 12% of the children who are within the basic school age read newspaper once a week.
Read
newspaper once a week.
Okay.
In other words, they're not reading. The number for those who listen to radio is around 40 or so percent. Television has gone up to about 60%. Then the use of the phone is about 80%. So the children are using technology, but they are far from building the fundamental skills that we all require for life. For me, as an educationist, the most important thing that we all must understand is that every child needs some fundamental education to develop the mind, to think. You're going to learn you're going to learn not only with your senses, but also learn to reason, to learn to think logically. Then you build the character. But for children to be able to even determine what will be happening in the future, they should grow their mind to a point, because we cannot tell what will happen in the next 20 years. Nobody can tell. But if I develop a child's mind and I got his ethics right, anything is possible. Anything is possible. So we should be working hard on our literacy skills now. Because I would say we're still finding the rates as very bad. By class 3, some children are not able to read and comprehend what they have read. Vocabulary levels are very low, and I don't know how they can use that to read the most important books that will shape their minds. It's important. So we need to begin from school to make them look at the phone not for the fun, but using the phone to leverage education. Use the phone to read. Use the phone to find out many other things from the school. And so stakeholders in education, who are in the tech space and all that, we should add our voice to get governments to take all the barriers that we need to take off to make sure that access to some of these things in our schools become easier. Even the policy in the schools that makes it difficult for children even to leverage technology in school must be taken off.
Because they are restricted from using phones?
Yeah, restricted from using it. And so they see the phone from the angle which is unproductive to education.
Okay.
So that we can change that whole cycle and begin to use the phone not for what they do with it, but to see the phone as the main tool.
So Kofi, maybe just the final one on what the woman said, comparing the online education as to the cost of the free education. Maybe just a quick one on that. I think I've been saying that my time is up. We'll continue with when we go home.
I think it's a good idea, but it's too early in the day. Ghana's experience with EdTech is like a child who lives in a very remote community who sees a toy for the first time. Any toy, it's okay, they're happy. But if you give that toy to my boy who lives in Accra, probably he's much more picky, and he will say, okay, I want a Paw Patrol. You understand? So he has a choice. We are at a very basic, level of technology, with the conception and acceptance. And so, yes, it is good to begin to have the conversation at the level where tech is coming in to leverage, but not to provide an alternative. Because if we don't take time, and we did a study on the rollout of the virtual learning system during COVID, if we don't take time, you end up using technology which is supposed to be a leveraging factor to rather exclude, deepen the discrimination in our educational system. And let me tell you, 20% of Ghana is without electricity. Okay, and apart from that, you have a majority of our schools in rural areas where there's no electricity connection. Less than 60% of Ghanaian public schools have electricity, even though about 70% of those are in districts, towns where there is electricity. So the town has electricity, but you go to a school somewhere, and electricity is no. And we all know what happens in schools in Greater Accra. Go to KC and find out. You see that because capitation grants, funds used for running basic schools is not going, there is no electricity because it's prepaid. So even electricity you cannot afford. So if you build EdTech as an alternative, then it will further segregate our education system, especially for children living in that part of the country. But the approach I think we should use is that from the top, at the tertiary level, and I'm happy a lot of our universities are doing more virtual learning than interface. Okay, it is the most reasonable, economically reasonable way of expanding access to tertiary education. Tertiary education is very expensive, and I always say that countries that devise cost-efficient way of expanding access to tertiary education are able to save some money and spend more on the labor-intensive basic education, which you can hardly substitute the benefit of interface engagement. Okay. So let's do more of virtual learning in tertiary. University of Cape Coast is the biggest university. You may not know. It's not because it's the biggest in terms of space, but they have the highest number of students. Most of them are virtual students. If you go to University of London, where I did my law program, majority of the students there are virtual students. Hundreds of thousands of students are in that school, but they are virtual. So if we can expand access to tertiary education and hit our target of 40% gross tertiary enrollment by 2030, focusing mainly not on brick and mortar, because we don't have the money to do infrastructure expansion today. And we do EdTech expansion. That is great. If there's money, we save money, and then invest more in interface engagement at the basic level. Tech will come only as a complementary, because we are not yet able to solve the problem of how children in Tintimshe will have access to learning portals. We say offline it works, but if you go to the community,
they're having challenges.
Perhaps our telecommunications companies also have a key role to play. In all the discussion about let the students use mobile phones in senior high schools, let them use senior high schools, everybody is forgetting about this, about the social media being the largest landmine in Ghana today. I mean, in the world today, it's a whole landmine.
Yeah.
So what innovations are in place to ensure that as you deploy mobile phones, tablets to senior high schools and allow students to use them, even though I know that it is difficult to find a senior high school student who hasn't got a mobile phone hidden. If you open the floodgates, how are you insulating them from the dangers of the social media landscape?
Kofi, I can see you are loaded, but because of the time space, the other panel is telling me that get ready.
Education is loaded, not me.
Yeah. Of course, education is the bedrock of all. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate all the panel for your time, and we thank you for sharing some of these insightful thoughts with us. I know that the discussion is going to continue. I mean, even when we are out of this place. But I think one of the key things that Dr. Edem was trying to challenge me with is that it's not just about we coming here to discuss at a panel, but we want to see the next step, so that next year when we are here today, we can say that, yes, we discussed this last year, but this is the outcome. You have been able to achieve A, B, C, D. So I think it's our prayer that all the panel discussions, let's try as much as possible that wherever the challenge is, we think around it and see how best we can come out with solutions, so that, next year when we meet here, at least, if not all, we have been able to take a step. And I think that will go a long way to help us. So thank you very much for having us, and we appreciate you. Thank you very much, Mr. MC.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's do it better for Richard and his panel. That was beautiful. Let's grab a picture quickly, and then we can proceed. Right, we're far behind time, and that's the reason we're trying to rush through, so that we'll be able to at least...
was my student.
Yeah, we want to be able to go through all the conversations before we leave here. So Gaia Penterini, Gaia, forgive me if I butcher your name. Gaia is the Director of Insights and Policy for Digital Inclusion, and Caroline Mbugua is the HSC Director of Public Policy. Both of them work for GSMA. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite them to join us here with a round of applause as they give us a brief presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Caroline will go first. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm not Gaia. My name is Caroline Mbugua. I am Director of Public Policy at the GSMA, managing the Sub-Saharan Africa region. And this afternoon, we'll be taking you through some insights that we gathered on a report that we've done on the impact of mobile money e-levy in Ghana. But before taking you through that particular, those particular insights, we thought it would be important for you to understand, or for us to take a journey on the landscape of connectivity in Sub-Saharan Africa compared to the rest of the region. So if we can start the slides, please. And on this slide, I wanted to demonstrate the, So on this slide, I wanted to demonstrate the state of connectivity in Sub-Saharan Africa. And if we can look at, well, after they're done moving the seats. If we can look at this slide, what you're trying to demonstrate is connectivity in Sub-Saharan Africa continues to be important. One that a lot of us here is the reason why we are here, to discuss mobile broadband connectivity. And we are talking about broadband connectivity in this case. Now, this particular image shows you the penetration of mobile broadband connectivity. And what you're seeing in dark colors, those are areas where connectivity is below 50%, in terms of below 20% in some areas, meaning these are the number of customers that are actually using mobile broadband network. And this is by count, in terms of number of customers and not necessarily total connections. And then what you're seeing in green is where you have over 50% of connectivity already done. So and if you can look at this, that's largely in South Africa, on Southern Africa, and the northern part of Africa. Now, that particular image shows you that we are a youthful continent, and that we already discussed, and a lot of other speakers that have come before me have said that. So we are a youthful continent, and one of the things that drives our people in terms of adoption of mobile broadband services is affordability of services. The more affordable services are, the easier it is, or the more adoption we see in a lot of other markets. So with this context, then we try to see how can we ensure that our youthful citizens are actually able to connect online. They actually see the opportunity that we have seen in terms of transforming connectivity in other markets. And as we move on to the next slide, we want to drill down and see exactly where is the challenge in terms of who is not going online and where is the challenge. So if you look at this, I'm hoping it's visible. So this is a comparison between sub-Saharan Africa and the rest of the world. So the colors you're seeing here, the red color, is the number of connected customers, meaning broadband customers that are actually using mobile broadband services. And what you're seeing in blue is what we refer to as a usage gap. These are customers that are covered by broadband services, but are actually not using this service for different reasons. And then what you're seeing up there as gray is actually what we call coverage gap. These are customers who are not covered by any broadband network whatsoever. So if you look at how we are doing in sub-Saharan Africa, which is, the last one, majority of the rest of the world have a much larger number of connected consumers, connected customers. Majority of our customers are here, what we call the usage gap, because you see we are at a 61%, what we call the usage gap. So then we have to ask ourselves, all this investment we are talking about in terms of laying the infrastructure, the important discussions we'll be having this morning around digitizing government services, providing agri-solutions online. The panel that was here just now was talking about education solutions online. So with the development of all that, and we don't have a good number of our people online, then that means that those are solutions that are laying idle. So what can we do to stimulate the usage of these services to make sure that we are not left behind in this industrial revolution, So those are the questions we need to start looking at. And when we drill down further, we look at what we call the gender gap. Now, if you look at this, we had been improving, somewhat from 2017, coming down from 36%, but from 2020, 2021, we moved back a bit. But this is still a very high number. As much as we had been improving, it's still a very high number at 37%. So it means that women are less likely to go online compared to men, in sub-Saharan Africa. And the same applies to the rural-urban gap. So these are the consumers in the rural areas, meaning that they are also less likely to go online. So meaning that we have an issue to address with our vulnerable groups. So these are women, the youth, and consumers in the rural areas. And one thing that they all have in common is the issue of affordability and the importance for us to address that particular issue so that we can have connectivity that is more inclusive, for us to be able to run our businesses, run solutions that actually provide meaningful solutions to consumers. If we can go to the next slide, and here I wanted us to look at how is each sub-region doing vis-a-vis what we are seeing globally. So what you see on this end, this is where the world is headed in terms of trends. And if this, what you're going to discuss, if these showdowns are not addressed, and we are calling them showdowns because, we are hearing big headlines coming out of some markets. There are discussions already happening on 6G, while we are still trying to wrap our heads around 5G as a region. So if these are not addressed, the digital divide that we already saw is only going to widen. So then, what are these showdowns? The rest of the region is currently talking about service evolution, meaning they've moved away from traditional connectivity of making calls, receiving calls, etc., to actually providing solutions through connectivity. And they're at a point where they're talking about 5G standalone, 5G maturity, etc. While if you look at the other side, for us as sub-Saharan Africa, we are currently struggling with a stifling fiscal burden that is threatening investment in our sector. Because if you listen in the headlines, every so often, we are always talking about a different form of fiscal burden that's coming to the mobile sector. So then the question is, how do we balance that fiscal burdens vis-a-vis the need to ensure that objectives of the government are met, investment is not stifled, And then the consumer, at the end of the day, who is front and center of all this, has the kind of solutions and has the capability of utilizing this solution. And the other trends that we see in the region, we are starting to hear discussions around 2G, 3G shutdowns, particularly in South Africa, for instance. While we still have a huge population of our people on 2G, as an example. I mean, I can point out operators here, and if you listen to the numbers of customers that are still on 2G, it's the biggest chunk. So when we talk about shutdown of 2G and 3G, then what does that mean in terms of, because if we look at the first slide that we discussed, majority of our people are still on 2G. So if we shut that down, then what are we saying? And then we are also now trying to talk about 4G maturity, which is important. Now, don't get me wrong, the technology evolution is very important. We need to start moving our people from the legacy networks, 2G and 3G, because of course 4G is more efficient in terms of running the network, provides better quality of service, and 5G is a game changer. Yeah? 5G is a game changer. It's not just an evolution. 5G is a revolution because it helps us develop solutions that were before unimaginable. Yeah? So the question is, how do we continue addressing the issues about affordability while being cognizant of the importance of moving forward with technology evolutions in our sub-region? And if you look at how we are doing again in terms of usage gap, I don't know if these figures are clear. We are looking at the global numbers. Again, the same trend continues. High connected numbers compared with the rest of our region, yeah, by sub-region. If we can go to the next slide. Now, we bring the story home, talk about Ghana. But we cannot talk about Ghana without also talking about some other countries in the region, because Ghana is a technology leader. Ghana has been setting the pace in a lot of technology developments. We all know that. Yeah? So if you look at these numbers, and we are looking at, again, how are we faring? Ghana has made great strides in closing what we call the coverage gap, because you only have 3% of population that is not covered. You know, not necessarily landmark, not necessarily geography. This is population that is not covered by a broadband network. So they're not covered by either 3G or 4G. Yeah, that's remarkable, because that means that significant investment has gone into these networks by both government and mobile operators. But then we still have the issue of the coverage, of the usage gap, which is at 71%. Okay, granted, it's not, you know, there are some countries that have other much higher usage gap than we have seen in other regions. But if you compare Ghana with other leaders in the region, like South Africa, for instance, if you look at this correlates with the figure that we have seen in the first graph, where a significant number of South Africans are connected to the internet. Yeah? So then we need to shift the conversation and start looking at what are these drivers of, what are these barriers of adoption. And if you look at this, according to a study that we have done as a GSMA and has also been done by other organizations like ITU, for instance, we've identified affordability, digital literacy, relevant content in local languages, issues around access to supporting infrastructure like digital ID as an example, you know, and also trust. How safe are consumers feeling online? But if you were to graduate these two, affordability always in the region ranks the highest, of course followed by literacy. And as we were discussing earlier, some of these other things are easy to crack. We just need to get our head around affordability of service and affordability of devices. And so what are these stimulants that we need to be supporting in terms of accelerating adoption of service? And if we can go to the next slide, where we start to look at how is Ghana doing in terms of technology and connectivity, and what are the projections we are seeing as a GSMA? Yeah? So if you look at this line, this first one first, this is 2G. So 2G between 2013 and 2015 was growing, but has been coming down in terms of number of connections. This is total connections, which is a good thing. It's a good thing for these numbers to be coming down, but they are still significantly high. And we can see 3G is picking up, yeah? 4G has also started picking up, and this is projections up to 2030. And we are looking at, by 2025, we are going to see a significant, the 2G will continue dropping significantly, and 3G will start coming down, which is a good thing. But if we have proper policy interventions in place, it means we can accelerate this movement much faster. So then we ask ourselves, what are these stimulants that we can be able to see, we can be able to start nurturing and grow, accelerate this journey? If we can go to the next slide. So here we look at where are we in terms of mobile money, and where does Ghana sit in the scheme of things? Yeah? And this is as per a report that we normally do every year, state of mobile money mobile money industry. If you look at Ghana, as I said before, Ghana has been a leader in a lot of technology evolution. Ghana accounts for 26% of mobile money active accounts in West Africa, besides only having 7% of the population. That's big. It means that the penetration of mobile financial services is high in Ghana. And we know that when consumers are using mobile financial services in our region, because our region, we say we are the developers of mobile financial services, we have seen a correlation between the uptake of mobile financial services and usage of data. Because it means that once you have the financial capability through financial inclusion to be able to do some transactions, then it means that it can easily cross-pollinate to broadband services. So the more we are able to encourage mobile financial services, it has a ripple effect or a benefit in the outcome in terms of broadband connectivities. And so how do we ensure that Ghana continues to be a leader in the region, continues to set the pace for a lot of other markets? If we can go to the next slide. So on this slide, we are showing again how Ghana has been doing in terms of growing. If you look at this, the red line is active mobile money accounts, has been growing steadily. And this is total volume of mobile money transactions. It's also been growing steadily, which is encouraging. It's an important thing for us to note. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you look at the proportion of the unbanked in Ghana compared to other countries, So I think, I can't see very well. So yes, Ghana is here. We're seeing that the proportion of the unbanked is at 32% as at 2021 at some point. Right. It's still, not where we'd want it to be, but it still is lower than other countries like Mozambique, and I'm not sure I can see that name very well, and catching up with market leaders like Kenya, South Africa, etc. So it means that we are doing something right. We are getting there. So this is an industry to continue nurturing, because as we continue, you'll be able to see the contribution of the mobile money industry to the economy of Ghana. And if we can go to the next slide, which is where now we'll be starting to discuss such numbers. So what I'd like us to focus on right now is what you're seeing here in red, where we are saying that the mobile sector contributes 6.3%, to Ghana's GDP by 2021. And the amount that was contributed by the mobile industry in terms of taxes amounts to about 7.7%. So if you look at the tax that the sector is contributing vis-a-vis their contribution to the GDP, it means that their tax burden is higher than what they are contributing to the economy as value. So what does that tell you? That consumers are shouldering a much higher cost in the transaction of services in the mobile sector. So again, I bring up the question, how do we balance that in terms of the fiscal obligations of government and the consumer at the end of the day, ensuring that the service that they are able to get are at the most affordable prices that we can. And according to the ITU, 10% increase in mobile penetration has a 2.5 impact on GDP. So the higher your consumers are connected, the greater the value to GDP overall. So the value is there, and we all understand it. Now, if we go to the next slide, and on this slide, I'll be discussing the importance to balance fiscal policy, which you already said, so I'm not going to dwell much on this because of time. If we can go to the next slide, where I'd like us to look at the correlation between affordability. Yes. So we have what we call the mobile connectivity index that we normally run. So this is an index of ranking how different countries are performing on various parameters and can support government decision making in policy making. So if you look at this, and what you're seeing here in gray, this is the affordability score in the mobile connectivity index. And what you're seeing in red is the tax burden on mobile services. Yeah? So the higher the tax burden, the lower the rating of affordability for different countries. Because if you look at Nigeria, for instance, the tax burden is not as much. And it means that the affordability rating is higher, meaning service is more affordable there compared to Ghana, for instance, that is here. And so forth, we can say for other markets. South Africa, the same, and it's reflective in the numbers, again, the slide that we discussed the first time. And when you look at this, sorry, just one last comment. So if you look at tax as a proportion of the cost of an entry device and also 1 GB of data in sub-Saharan Africa. So we looked at different markets. How are we faring? Yeah? So these are general taxes and these are specific taxes. So if you look at countries on this side, it means that taxes are higher as a percentage of, the tax element in a device and data is higher for these countries. And when you look at Ghana, it's the second highest in the region. Again, it speaks to the narrative of the tax burden. So what we are saying at the end of the day, great strides have been made, and we continue to see these strides, yielding fruit. There are discussions that have been held by government that have yielded some fruit in terms of the reduction of the e-levy, for instance, from 1.5% to 1%. And when that was done, we saw significant improvement, yeah, in terms of the uptake of service. There was an immediate reaction by consumers. So it means that there is that willingness for that discussion to happen. So what we are saying is we're encouraging for more and more discussions to take place so that we can continue to see the benefit to the consumer at the end of the day, because that's why we are here. That's why the government is here. I will stop my presentation here, and I'm happy to take any questions after this, and welcome my colleague Gaia, who will take us through the rest, the findings of the research work that we did. Thanks.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm happy to be here with you all. I'm going to present the results from a specific piece of research that we did as GSMA in partnership with our mobile operator members here in Ghana and with the Chamber. So when the e-levy was introduced, we set ourselves the objective to collect data, granular data, on the impact that the levy would have had on the mobile money market. And so we collected data from our members here in Ghana from May 2022, when the levy was introduced, until January, so January 23. And we also collected 1 year of data before that, before the introduction of the levy, so that we would be able to compare the impacts. So I'm going to now go into the findings. Please, can I have the next slide? So as I said, we conducted an economic impact assessment of the mobile money, of the impact of the levy on the mobile money market from granular data, granular monthly data on mobile money transactions, by value, on volumes, on different variables. And we found that the levy had quite a large impact on the market. And perhaps this was not obvious because, at least from a researcher point of view, there's not a lot of literature on the demand elasticity, so the reaction that consumers in the mobile money market have to price changes. And this levy, in kind of economic speak, was an exogenous shock. That is to say, a change in price that didn't come from the supply and demand finding their their own price. And so I believe this research is important because it sheds light on what mobile money consumers, how they react to price changes. And also it's important for the mobile money market to understand what happened to financial inclusions when price levers, like policy levers like this one, are changed. And to the government, it can provide insights to find a way to balance the policy objective of clearly raising revenues, raising government revenues to deliver public services, but also making sure that the mobile money and the mobile market continues to develop in Ghana. So please, can I have the next slide? So this is the first thing that we looked at. This is the number of P2P transactions. The levy applied to P2P transactions, withdrawal transactions, agent and merchant payments were exempt, and also the P2P transactions below 100 CDs were exempt, and we will see the impact of that in a minute. But this is the average number of P2P transactions, and you can clearly see there's a very, very big drop in the number of transactions starting in March, which is probably because consumers start to anticipate the change with their behavior once they hear the announcement in the budget. There was a 25% drop in average transaction numbers in May 2022. And then, if you can see, the volumes kind of started to recover a bit, but definitely on a lower growth trajectory. And the dotted line is an estimation that we made of where the numbers would have been had the levy not been introduced. So this would be the level where the market would be without the levy. And you can see that the change is quite persistent because still in January 2023, transactions were still 22% lower. And it's okay, yeah, that's fine, we can move to the next slide. I just wanted to say that in all of these variables that we looked at, we did notice a slight pickup and like a positive increase from November when the decrease of the rate was announced to 1%. And you will see this for most variables that from November it happens. So this is another look at P2P transaction numbers, but it's by transaction value. And this is important because it gives us an idea of how regressive the price change can be. So if it impacts more low-value transactions and therefore potentially lower income consumers or higher value transactions. Clearly, as we see, the transaction below 100 CDs, it's the darkest line, were much less impacted, probably also because of the exemption. However, they also decreased, and we think that, first of all, the exemption, because it applied only to the first transaction of the day, so if you did more than one, below 100 CD, then you would still need to pay the levy. And then you can see that transactions in the middle band from 100 to 200 CDs were impacted quite a bit, and the most impacted were the transactions above 200 CDs. On the right-hand side, you see the same story, but is the percentage change. So the decrease with respect to the level at March 2022, before the announcement. Hold on 1 second, I'm still on this slide just to underline the impact numbers, which are quite large, because transactions below 100 CDs decreased 20% in May 2022. Those in the middle band decreased by almost 30%, and the higher value transactions decreased by 50%. So quite large numbers. Next slide, please. So this is the other side of the coin. It appears that in order to avoid the levy, consumers are cashing out, are taking money out of the system, out of the mobile money system. Cash outs, so withdrawals of mobile money increased a lot since May 2022. We believe that there's kind of two impacts here which we were not able to unpick. One is the fact that people are taking the money out of the system completely, and the other is the fact that they are trying to avoid the levy by using the agent network instead and then cashing out. But either way, it looks like a very unusual increase in withdrawals, which looks like it's correlated to the introduction of the levy. So an increase of 25% year-on-year in volumes and 60% in values of cash out. Next slide, please. This is, again, another view at P2P transactions, which shows the average value of transactions. The average value of transactions has decreased because, as we've seen before, the most impacted transactions were the higher value ones. So while you know, a policy objective and probably an objective that we can all agree on would be to, you know, cushion the lower the lower value transaction, the lower incomes. It appears that those are less sensitive, maybe also because of the threshold, but then when the price, but then the lower, the higher value transactions are really, really sensitive to price. Next slide, please. All of this has resulted in reduced mobile money revenues from our operators, so a contraction of the market overall. The revenues, so here you have both revenues, which are the gray lines, and the value of transactions. The value of transactions, you can see that at January 2023 was still 31% lower than we estimate would have been without the levy, and mobile money revenues were 8% lower than they would have been without the levy. And these include all mobile money revenues, so not just from the P2P services that were subject to the levy. So quite significant impacts. Now, this is what I was hinting at before, which is this data allowed us to calculate from microdata the elasticity of demand of mobile money services. And we see, except for the lower band, so below 100 CD, because of the threshold, looks quite inelastic, but then all of the other elasticities have an absolute value of over 1, which means that demand is elastic. And some of the elasticities are, in fact, very high. The different column represents different time periods. So the 6 months average is the impact, is the elasticity after 6 months. For transactions above 200 CDs is minus 2.35, which is a very large elasticity. Next slide. I think we skipped one. There was one, this one, yeah. So all of this has not only implications on the mobile money industry, so on the revenues and profits of our industry, but also on government revenues. And this calculation, this table shows you what we believe should be taken into account when assessing the net impact of a policy such as this one. Because there are several revenue impacts that that the government can expect to receive. So one is the direct tax intake from the levy, so the levy that the operators pay into the government. And that's the first line, the green line. Already this has been quite below expectations for the government, and I believe that you know, it's quite accepted that it has, and this is because of the demand response that I just discussed so far. So the first line is the revenue from the government, but is smaller than one would expect with a more inelastic demand. But then also we need to take into account the loss in revenue from because mobile money operators are losing money and their revenues are lower. Their profits will be lower, so the taxes that they pay on those profits and on those revenues will be lower as well for the government. And then finally, there's a third impact, which is the indirect impact, which is the loss in the positive economic impact that mobile money has on the wider economy. So if the mobile market contracts and there's less access to financial inclusion, there is foregone benefit in terms of GDP impact. These are high-level calculations, and I've used an economic impact coefficient that is in the literature, which tells us that for a 10% increase in mobile money penetration, there's a 1% increase in GDP growth. Next slide. Thank you. So we've developed together with our members and the Chamber a set of recommendations to help and guide policy, hopefully, in Ghana. The first one is to look into the possible unintended consequences of some policy choices, and clearly we developed this research to support and to build an evidence base on the impact of this policy. Next slide, please. And then a recognition of the benefits that the sector brings to the economy, to GDP. The sector is one of the most, it's a very important taxpayer to the government of Ghana and a contributor to the government beyond aid strategy. It's a highly formalized sector, so very important for domestic revenue mobilization. But as we've seen, we need to take into account the characteristic of the market to really estimate how much revenue certain policies would bring, and what's the what's the trade-off. I think I'm finished. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions if there's any on the research. Otherwise, you can find me and I can share it with you, or Kenneth or Bobby. Yeah. Thank you.
Right, thank you so much. We have 2 more sessions, 2 more panelists to join us, and then from there, we will bring this program to an end. I'd like to tell all of you that don't be in a rush to go home. There is going to be a cocktail. Stanbic Bank has decided to give us a very beautiful cocktail session after this program. So don't be in a rush to go home. I see the wine has been lined up at the back. It's going to be a party session, so please do not be in a rush. Winifred and her team have promised to run this session very, very quickly. So if the team can help me, let's just get the seats back. Bobby, can you please coordinate that for me? Let's get the seats back on stage so we can have Winifred and her panelists join us for the next session. The conversation for the next session, which will be panel 4, will be, the subject is digitized payments. They'll be talking to us about digitized payments. And the moderator, like I said, will be Winifred Abuaji Kotin. Did I get that right? Okay, I'm sure you'll correct it when you come. Right, so even before Winifred comes, because we're still setting up. David, can we coordinate and have it set up quickly? Right. Let me quickly acknowledge some of our sponsors whilst we still set up. This program or this conference is proudly powered by Vodafone Cash, Huawei, ZPay Ghana Limited, Mobile Money Limited, Stanbic Bank Limited, Airtel Tigo Money, People's Pension Trust, IT Consortium, Opportunity International Savings and Loans, B-Box Limited, Gibbs, Fidelity Bank, and the media partners are Joy News, Graphic News Plus, and ABC News Ghana. We're also live on all the digital platforms with the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications. We're going to have our final 2 sessions, panel 4 and then panel 5 will be the last one, and then we can draw a curtain to today's program. I believe it's been very insightful. I have personally learned a lot of things today. I've also had the chance to see people that I haven't seen in a very long time. Judith, I'm not murdering your name again. Right, so with a round of applause, shall we welcome Winifred and her panelists, right?
Hi, Winifred.
Hi. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for staying. Thanks for joining us as we discuss digital payments. Help me welcome our panelists. So we have Shaibu Haruna, Acting CEO of Mobile Money Limited. And then we have Kweku joining us on behalf of Archie Hesse for Gibbs. Okay, so I think I'd let everyone introduce themselves. That would make it much better so that they can do it.
Yeah, I'll start.
You can start speaking.
So my name is Kweku Tete. I'm the head of real-time payments at Ghana Interbank Payment and Settlement Systems Limited, GIPS, a wholly owned subsidiary of the central bank, set up to lead the digitization of the payment sector. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Shaibu Haruna. I take care of your mobile money, MTN Mobile Money.
My name is Eric Nsako. I head the engineering team at Stanbic Bank.
Good afternoon once again. My name hasn't changed. It's Caroline Gugwa from the GSMA.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. So we got this awesome report looking at how we've progressed with mobile, with digital payments, with mobile money, and it sets the stage for our session. So Africa is one of the leaders when it comes to digital payments based on the mobile money development, which has seen significant action, especially in how the economy of Africa has been transformed. And I'd like to start with you. Caroline, what do you think has been the main drivers of this adoption, growth, and transformation we've seen from the digital payments perspective, given your central role, connecting all the actors and the overview you have and the deep research you do? What do you think has been the factors that has driven the adoption we've seen?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. And they say ladies first, no? Mm-hmm. So I'm happy to go first. And just to add on what you were saying, you're right. Africa is a leader on matters mobile money. Because if you look at global figures that we have researched at the GSMA, in terms of total connections, we are looking at 1.35 billion connections globally. But more than half of that is from Africa, which is more than 600 million connections. So it means that there's something we've gotten right in Africa. And the question is, what is that thing that we've gotten right that is driving this kind of penetration? So number one, I will say an enabling policy environment, regulatory and policy environment. And this is because in Africa, we saw a lot of non-bank organizations given license or allowed to actually roll out financial services, and this is not something that we have seen in a lot of other regions. Mm. So because of that intervention by the government, allowing the industry to go fast and regulations to follow later, it gave us sort of like, head start in ensuring that we are set up for success. So that's number one. Number two, we are a mobile-first continent. We consume our services through mobile because a lot of us largely connect to the internet through a mobile device compared to like a computer. So that means when you have these digital financial services on your mobile device, the rate of penetration is much higher than in other regions. And the other thing, when you look at how a mobile operator is set up, we already have a significant number of customers in your traditional telecommunication space. So cross-selling into mobile financial services, makes it easier, and that drives that penetration again that you're seeing. So these are some of the things that we see. And again, when you look at the distribution network of mobile operators, in the region and generally, is high. So it makes it easier to actually reach customers and to reach them for these solutions. So I would say those are some of the things. And the main one, which I think has been a key driver, is the use case. There was a problem that was existing, that a lot of people were not able to afford banking services or didn't have access to banking services. And then mobile financial solutions came to address that problem that was existing. By addressing that problem, then the uptake was much higher. So I would say those are some of the things that we have observed would be the key drivers of accelerated mobile financial services growth in the region.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Caroline. And what you're saying is so true. I was working in banking when we started the mobile money adoption in Ghana. And yes, we had the policy, we had regulatory support. And for us in banking at that time, what really made it exciting was because we couldn't reach the gap of the population that mobile money was focused on. So it made sense for us to join, to partner, to integrate, and to promote the services. I think I'd like to come to you, Eric. You've been in the mobile money game for so long across different industries and different enterprises. What were some of the specific initiatives, in your opinion, which has led Ghana to be dominant in the payments, in the digital payment space compared to other African countries? What were some of the specific initiatives from the enterprise point of view or perspective, not from the regulatory framework or the bigger picture, from the enterprises you've worked in? What were some of the innovations, the initiatives, and the key drivers that has led us to grow astronomically over the years?
Well, thank you very much. I must first of all say, you might have seen I was making notes immediately that GSMA comes from a different world from where I have come from. And I was particularly intrigued by policy, mobile first use case, because we don't have as much interfaces with government and so on. I mean, let me speak for myself. Shaibu normally does, but I normally am more of a private sector, distribution, partnership, commercial strategy kind of guy. And so what I've seen following on from that is, look, in 2008 when I joined, in fact, I joined telecoms in 2007 through a little company called Discoverytel, and then into Tigo in 2008. As Chief Information Officer, mobile money was just something that was a platform I was supposed to install. There was nothing in the market. Right? So if you fast track from there to 2012, where I was just discussing with Caroline that as of 2012, when I was really now in the commercial space, the number of wallets in Ghana, mobile money, was probably about 220,000 or something like that, whereas Tanzania was about 8 million. So for something that was launched in 2009, I think that's where the question starts from.
Yeah.
That what happened in the first 4 years that took us to, 200,000 monthly active users. And then what happened in the 7 or so years after that, that took us to 11.7 million. And I think that second bucket, the one that took us to 11.7 million, was on the back of Treasury partnership. East Africa is a story that is well articulated. So I've been on a conference call with Michael Joseph, who's credited with being the founder of M-Pesa, and he said he came to Ghana and he realized that he cannot do it because the Vodafone cash that he was pushing here, he wanted to implement the telco-led approach, which was what had happened at Safaricom. So over here, we made a conscious decision in 2014 that purely out of the fact that we were not a cashiering company, we were not people who could manage tellers, we invited big banks into our premises to come and manage the teller. And I think that was the takeoff point from what I see, because those same banks we brought, they came and they understood mobile money. At that time, there was no interest on the float. So they saw it as free money. Then they invested in the distribution, where they signed off contracts with microfinance organizations, with Opportunities International, people who were here in the last lot, and the money reached the agents. As far as I'm concerned, mobile money is a liquidity game. That's why it's called money. So once the money reaches the agents, I've been in banking in the last 2 years. I mean, what happens in telco compared to what happens in banking is night and day. So once the money reaches the agents, and then you put incentives out there for the teams on the ground to now go and start signing on people, you put technology that secures it, and then you put a talent journey. I'm sure you have questions on the others. We'll talk about those later. But in summary, that's what I see.
Yeah, that's very exciting and very interesting. And I think I'll come to you, Shaibu, because I think that flows to your side. What we know, the vision is big, the vision is grand. We have a lot of goals. There's a lot of work which has gone down already. In your opinion, what would you say has been the challenges which you've had to overcome or are still dealing with in terms of the targets you've set to achieve? We've made progress, but I know we are not there yet. So what are the challenges from your perspective that has hampered the progressive growth and the astronomical growth we could have had?
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'll start off first by trying to contextualize the journey. Okay. I think that gives us a good view in terms of how we look at some of the challenges. So I want to break it down into three parts, which is around the journey around starting off with wallets, where customers were exposed to, basic services to be able to send money, and that was driven by, adoption of 2G technology in driving, transactions. Then we've shifted up into, you call it the digital space, where we begin to a lot more digitized transactions, and you see the fintechs coming on top to also deliver, payment services on top of what we built. And now there's a big push towards lending, and you see a lot of services coming on top in terms of pushing lending. I think the ultimate game is actually to build ecosystems, and actually very integrated ecosystems. And I was very pleased to listen to the conversation this morning around some of the education value chain and the agro value chain. There's a lot that we can do in this ecosystem, but I think that the foundations in terms of opening up the opportunity has been built now. And with the level of smartphone penetration that we're seeing, I know we can do better, but when we look at our network, we see a lot of opportunity to deepen it. So if you look at the profile of people using smartphone on our network, and you also look at the demographics that is sitting on our network, you see the big opportunity that sits with the Gen Zs and millennials in terms of how they are using financial services. And by the very nature of their lifestyle, you see the prospects in terms of deepening financial inclusion, especially for payments in that ecosystem. I'll give you an example. I mean, a lot of the youth are involved in their side hustles, right? And the key engine to drive or to unlock value for them is actually payments. And that ecosystem is what we collectively as an industry need to build. And I think part of what we need to build is a more open ecosystem that supports, specifically speaking, around merchant payments, both online and offline channels, to be able to really deepen the depth of payments in our environment. If you look at where we sit today in Africa, I mean, the number of transactions is close to about 5 to 7% in Africa is actually digital. The rest of it is actually still cash. And if you compare our market to the likes of Turkey, where you have around 50% penetration of digital, it tells you the opportunity that sits within our ecosystem. So I think, for me, the big piece is building an ecosystem where everybody plays and building a more open ecosystem that supports, interoperable services across the value chain and across the verticals.
Okay, thanks so much. I have a follow-on question for you. What you've talked about is it takes patience and a lot of hard work. Okay, so building these pieces, building the use cases for those with side hustles, with innovators who are looking at solving specific use case problems that would increase and entrench the usage. What should keep hope alive for them? Because, telcos are big, banks are huge, okay? Banks and telcos can afford the hope or wait till things happen. For smaller enterprises that are now coming in, who are looking to build on top of the ecosystem and the infrastructure that has been created, what would you tell them to encourage them to stay on? Is there light at the end of the tunnel? How does the light look like?
The truth is, there's actually no tunnel. It's actually an open play now. They have access to all the platforms, and thanks to some of the solid infrastructure that has been built, we have the capacity. What we need now is to have innovators, is to have entrepreneurs, and also to have capital to actually invest and develop the ecosystem.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm sure those of us who are already thinking of use cases, this is some great advice to us. I'll come to you, Kweku. So from your role, you kind of hold everyone together, providing the exchanges that we need to be able to pay across different providers. I know technology is a key driver for the service you are able to provide to various players. How do you see the advancements we are having in technology, things like AI, providing and digital currencies? Do you see that as an opportunity that would let us be able to deliver greater value in the payment space? Or are there any opportunities you see coming up from enhancing and growth in technology that would have significant impact on the digital payments place, speaking from the perspective of GIBS?
Yeah, as you said, our role is really to enable the ecosystem. Originally, we started with banks. At the time, the telcos were not active in the space. Fintechs were just fledgling at the time. So over the period, the telcos have come on board, fintechs have come on board, so we've been able to allow all these to interact at the very top level, to allow them to innovate around what we provide, which is access to bank accounts, to mobile wallets, and to provide customers with unique services. In the area of adoption of AI, and how does it impact what we do? I think for now, the focus should be on growing, as you said, horizontally, expanding and covering a lot more of the population. There's a lot more of our population that are still excluded, and they need to be brought into digital economy. So digital inclusion, and on top of that, we can have digital financial inclusion. And so we need to deal with issues of access, even the quality of connectivity. I live in an urban area, I live in Ashalibuchwe, but in my house, sometimes I hardly can make a phone call. And even to get 3G, I have H+ all the time. So the quality of the network, things like that, should be improved. Maybe government should give incentives to the players to invest a lot in improving the quality so we can expand the coverage, the usage. And also you realize that a lot of the people who are in the low income group hardly interact with these services. I mean, they are more beneficiaries, they go and they take it out. But we want to see the use of digital technology as a daily lifestyle, embedded in their life where they can interact with the service on a regular basis. That consistency and frequency of using the service. Those are things that we should focus on, because these days the active word you see around is inclusiveness, inclusivity. There we have the technology there, we have all the rails, built all the rails, but are we going to see another big divide where we have the Gen Zs moving fast ahead and the rest of the people down there not coming along? So nobody should be left behind. So we provide a platform for the players in the market to innovate, to access those in the lower income groups. So for us, the focus should be getting everybody to come along so that as we innovate, they can also be part of the digital economy.
Okay, thanks so much. I think that's the last question, and anyone can feel free to take it. So talking about inclusivity, access to affordable devices still remains one of the biggest barriers after electricity. What can we do? What can actors do? Or what should the state and government leaders be doing and actors in the space be doing to enable more people have access to connected devices affordably? From the places you sit, what would you say would be some of the ways we can tackle that burden or that barrier?
Maybe I go.
I'm sure you are formerly the one.
That's an interesting one. I think Caroline's presentation kind of gave us a sense of where we are, and the big one, obviously, is affordability, right? And if you look at the cost of entry, especially for smart devices, the focus now is not so much on the feature set, because again, you want to do more than just wallet transactions, right? You want to advance into payment. So we want to encourage our customers to actually begin to start the journey from a smartphone kind of environment. Remember, it's costing us as telecom operators to actually maintain maybe 4 different technology types, 2G, 3G, 4G, and possibly 5G going into the future. And we have to transition our customers in order to also have a more efficient network to serve them. Now, the big question around affordability is a question of how do we bring access to them. Thankfully, we have a lot of data that we are sitting on, which helps us today to be able to work through in terms of credit scoring and being able to provide some credits. And there's opportunity for us to do things around device financing. As an example, we've started some initiatives with other partners to drive this. I think the other side of it is also to look at it from the policy point of view in order to bring down the tax burden on devices. That way, we can also accelerate the curve in terms of smartphone in the hands of people. Over and above this whole discussion, for me, I think a bigger part of it, as far as smartphone is concerned and how it links to payment, is the bit around functional digital literacy. We have a lot of people on our network who are using smart devices, but are purely using them for very basic service. And they are perhaps consuming and using USSD to do very basic services. If we deepen that education and engagement, then we can extract a lot more value even for those who are connected to be able to participate more in the payment ecosystem. So the charge is for all of us, to put in the efforts and focus to actually drive the depth of penetration.
If you can allow me just to build on what my colleague was talking about here, spot on. I think we need to take a step back and ask ourselves, why is this device unaffordable? There is a cost element, and there is the financial muscle of the consumer. So when we think about why the device is unaffordable, it's because there's a certain price point the consumers can meet. Yeah? So currently, the reason why we have more feature phones is because they range at a certain, maybe $10, $20, thereabout. So that tells us something. And I like what Saibu has just said now, that we have data and we can use data to be able to do some of these analytics. It tells us that there's a certain price point that consumers, if they're exposed to that price point, then would start to see a lot of this uptick, because we've just identified that affordability is one of the biggest challenges. So then we say, then how do we get this device to this price point? By doing that, for us to understand that, we have to break down the components of this device in terms of the costs. So we have the costs of taxes, so we can reduce things like import duty tax, and various other taxes. We've been able to demonstrate in terms of the different taxes that make up a device. But there's one key element that I think it's important that we start having a discussion about, and a candid discussion about, which is the intellectual property rights cost in the device. Yeah? And we have seen that the cost of it is almost 30%. That's a significant cost. So then the question is, if we are truly, truly determined in ensuring that Africa as a continent is not left behind, why are we not having conversations around such a cost? Because it's there. Other sectors, such as Big Pharma, the pharmaceutical, have been able to address intellectual property cost in medical devices for Africa and other, developing countries. So then, because we established during COVID that those who are able to connect to broadband or to use mobile connectivity continued on with their life like almost nothing happened. When you got all the lockdowns and all these interventions to slow down the spread of the virus. And those who did not, some countries closed schools for more than 2 years because their penetration levels were so low, it was going to be very discriminatory to continue learning online while a big number of the population were offline. So if we are really truly committed to that cause, then we need to start having those conversations of, can we remove this cost? Can we reduce it? What can be done? And it's a discussion that needs to grow legs beyond just Ghana. It's one that requires Africa as a whole to sit down and honestly have these conversations and say, we can find a way of reducing these costs. If you're asking government to reduce taxes, mobile operators are doing their part in terms of packaging and giving this in terms of device financing. And in some markets, we are seeing they are partnering with banks like Rwanda, for instance, in providing these solutions. But the cost is still high. And the other thing that we need to understand, when you look at our people and we looked at the population we have a young, a youthful continent. Yeah. So they will not settle for a mediocre phone, for lack of a better word. They want a device that, can take proper photos and, they can be able to, proper functioning smartphone. So for us to be able to achieve that, then we need to be having these candid discussions around what needs to be done to bring that cost down. What are the cost elements and who needs to take that decision? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, panelists. Can we take some questions? Do we have time or?
Maybe just a point.
Okay. Please
just
go
a
ahead.
quick point on the devices. I think, like I started by saying, some of us have been in the informal sector all our life. And I still remember that to be able to get smartphone penetration up in Ghana, I remember literally the moment when we were sitting at the tiptoe lane with the big traders of smartphones in Ghana, identifying the points where, for example, incentive bundles that are given to Samsung and Apple devices, at that time the telecom billing platforms could not give them to Chinese devices, except for Huawei and some of the bigger ones. And the point I'm getting towards is that the engineering skills of Africa are very essential for bringing the cost down, because we have to sit as salespeople with the billing teams and reconfigure those automatic device controllers to be able to make sure that the devices will get the incentives. We had to make sure that we could put Wi-Fi on the tiptoe lane. And when engineers ask me, how can you put Wi-Fi among kiosks and huts, I ask them, how do they put it on Times Square in New York? Go and find out. So engineering has to come to the fore for us to be able to bring smartphone prices down. The issues of intellectual property are very relevant. I had a sad realization when I spoke to somebody who is at the World Intellectual Property Organization, and they said the feeling was that Africa likes to share knowledge, so they didn't want to protect knowledge here. Some of the things that we did, if we had got universities to write about them, there would be very big articles as well. Whatever you do, the government is not going to give a big telco the same incentive that it will give a small trader. So the conversation around the Ghana Union of Traders Associations, where there are 7.5 million traders, how do you bring them in? So some of the digital commerce platforms that we are rolling out today, I have one myself, some of you know about it, Bruno and so on. But you bring those in so that you can bring in the GUTA, the Ghana Union of Traders Associations, where they meet. The Minister of Finance cannot go there, but we can go.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe in future one day we'll get to the point where we actually manufacture the devices on the continent to make the cost affordable for all. Please, questions from the audience? Any questions for our panelists?
Graveyard. Yeah. Graveyard.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for having us. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Take it off. Okay.
All right, yeah, so we'll take a picture quickly and then we'll have our final.
I think, okay, I was going to say
for symmetry.
Yeah, okay.
We'll have a final set before we move into the cocktail session. We'll bring this session to a close and then we move to the cocktail side. Right, you got that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you, Caroline, and your lovely
Thank you so much.
panel. Please, let's give them another round of applause. That was beautiful. Thank you. Now, the very final session will be on the subject crystal balling, and it will be moderated by Clara Atta. Clara is with the UNCDF. So Clara and her team will be getting ready to join us very, very soon. In the meantime, let me remind all of you once again that please don't be in a rush to go home right after this place. Stanbic Bank has promised to give us a very brief cocktail session in the foyer. I've seen them line up the wine and all the other things that comes with it. So please don't be in a rush to leave. Can we take some messages from our sponsors? Just one, so that we can have the next set, mic'd up for. Yeah, right. Okay, let's take some messages from our sponsors.
Sorry for the interruption, but due to the acidic content of the atmospheric weather condition in the
Anti-day.
Dial *715#.
Oh, again?
Yes, again, because I know what's coming.
Oh, Auntie, see, my data is finishing. Try my hotspot.
Dial *715#.
To buy airtime.
Dial *715#.
Send money to the workers.
Dial *715#.
Even the boys' night out.
Just dial *715# and get things done. You don't need data to bank with Stanbic. With Stanbic, imagine all the 1,001 ways you can bank without the internet. Or stressing me out.
And see, dead.
Social distance.
To register, visit stanbicbank.com.gh and click the service request button, or send a message on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Stanbic Bank GH. You can also call us on 0302 815 789.
Sorry for the interruption, but due to the acidic content of the atmospheric weather condition in the economy, I have decided metal afemuntin kabo editui na munshanenso for wache metal 1 Ghana cedi for jollof rice 1 cedi 20 pesos for gobe 80 pesos for kenke tamai any other cow 1 cedi 50 pesos.
You know what, just get me water.
For sachet water 30 pesos. For bottled water 50 pesos. Oh, moka has me Vodafone cash I'm the free. I'm free. Metal.
Transfer charges. Bida. Switch to Vodafone Cash today and enjoy 0 charges whenever you send money to all networks. Yes, sending money is free on Vodafone Cash. Only e-levy applies. Dial *110# to send money today.
Hey, and you for fufu by this time. And yes, when you been
Vodafone.
Going far from home and out of my
beautiful conference that we've had today, and I have the beautiful Clara here with me, and so Clara will introduce her panel. A round of applause for Clara.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. This is the second time I've had to moderate this panel when it's last. You know that we had a similar thing the last MT4D. So it's a pleasure to be with you and then to moderate. I would ask my panelists to join me. Andrew, please join me. Kwesi, please join me. Leo, please join me. Abna, please join me. Please. Yes. A few housekeeping rules. So for this panel, which is the last panel for the day, I would briefly introduce myself, hand over to you, and then you briefly introduce yourself. I will come back with a series of questions, which you would all answer from your individual perspective. So my name is Clara Arthur. I work with the UNCDF. This is the second time I'm actually moderating this panel. So I think Andrew is going to be one for us going forward with every MT4D. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. And as UNCDF in Ghana, it's a delight for us to be here. And what we do actually fits in squarely with what we've done here today. The first panel this morning actually looked at trends in tech. We've looked at the second panel that actually looked at agri-tech. We looked at the third that looked at edutech. We looked at the last one that actually discussed digitized payments. So I think if I look at all the panels that we've had today, it's befitting that we have the last one, which is actually looking through the crystal balls. I remember there used to be a program that was looking through the keyhole. I don't remember if you remember, but it was when we were students in the UK. There was a program, and I loved that program. And it was so interesting because you never know what you find behind the keyhole. So for me, looking through the keyhole, we have heard everything. We've heard about 680 million mobile money accounts or wallets. We've seen what GSMA has presented. Just before this session, I actually looked at the fact that what is going on in Africa, and I realized we have a youthful population. I realized when it comes to penetration of mobile money, we've seen it. Today we have the data. So I keep wondering, what's still holding us back? I mean, at UNCDF, with what we do, we actually work in terms of promoting catalytic finance. And when I talk about that, it means that at UNCDF, we work through financial service providers. They could be bank, they could be payment service providers, electronic money issuers. And what we do is actually support their efforts to ensure that we can take digital and innovation, looking at the last mile, looking at how we can actually promote digitization and ensure that we leverage these services that we have all deployed to extend financial services to the very vulnerable groups. And when we talk about vulnerable groups, it's women, it's youth, it's MSMEs. And I think today we've actually set the tone to have this discussion. What I'd like us to do here is to actually stand back and to say, looking through the future, if you had a crystal ball here, what should Africa do to leapfrog everything? You can tell everything is ripe. We have the infrastructure, we have the people, we have the youth. What is stopping us? To start off, I'd ask Andrew to introduce himself, Abna will introduce herself, Leo, and then Kwesi, and then I'll come with the first round of questions. So Andrew, please introduce yourself to everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you, the organizers. My name is Andrew Chichiapia. I'm actually the founder and managing director of ZPay. ZPay is a fintech that specializes in mobile money. We focus on international money transfers, cash into mobile money, and then we build our use cases from there. I'm very happy to be here today. Clara is a partner, and of course, the platform itself is a partner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Please.
Okay, my name is Mabna Brubi. I'm from IT Consortium. At IT Consortium, we are a financial technology provider, and we are present in banks, we are present in so many other sectors, pensions, savings, etc. Yes, so we just provide innovative solutions that meet the needs of customers, basically.
Thank you, Mabna. Leo, over to you.
Thank you for, pardon me, thank you for having us here. My name is Leo Scarlatos, and I'm from Airtel Tigo, and we're busy restructuring and bringing up the company back up to where it should be.
That's interesting. Thank you, Leo. Yes, please, Kwesi, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kwesi Finn. I am the CTO at Second Stacks. A lot of you probably don't know what Second Stacks is. We are, I'll say, a relatively new company. We launched back in November. But we work in also a very niche market, which is the capital market space. And our product is basically linking different capital markets on the continent through one platform. It's very good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kwesi. So I have a very first question. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to ask a question and you all answer. So I'll do a first round, second round. I can tell we have less than 30 minutes. So we have 20 minutes and then we would give the floor if we have any questions through the social media handles or any of the audience. So my first question to all of you. I know we've heard it all. The data is there. Everything speaks to the fact that Africa can actually leapfrog this for development. So the first question that I have is, what can we do to change the narrative of Africa as a poor and needy continent? Andrew, my first question comes to you. I actually come to you first because of what ZPay has achieved. And for me, when I look around now in terms of finding that Africa fintech leader who's a game changer in mobile money space, I look no further than ZPay. So please tell me, from what you have achieved so far, looking at your commitment to expanding access to financial services, what are you doing as ZPay to actually change this narrative about Africa? Same question would come to all of you, so you can start getting ready. Please, Andrew, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, first of all, Clara, that's a very broad and difficult question, but we'll try to answer you. So the global payments industry is probably about we ended last year about $520 billion. We're going to jump to about 618 billion this year. We'll plateau in 2026 at about 20 trillion. The question is, out of that 20 trillion, how much of that pie belongs to Africa? Remittance alone is about maybe 90 billion. Payments put together is about another 200 billion. Okay, so now that we're clear what belongs to us, I think the transition is not, the transition is not because we're poor, but the transition is probably because we don't have wealth in our minds. And I'll explain that. We don't have wealth in our minds because we're not sectorial driven. So the payment industry needs to go into a sectorial focus. We need to start getting to the point where, from an emerging perspective, you have, for example, payment companies that focus on remittances, insurance, banking, type of banking services, capital markets, etc. So that it's product solution driven and not use cases. We started from a use case perspective. There's nothing wrong with that. Beautiful, wonderful. But it's 10 years down the lane. Use cases are no more the answer. That's why you find that a Telecom Y and a Telecom X will compete against each other, they will lose. But players like us will emerge and be profitable. Because we need to start being solutions driven. We decided to just focus on remittances. It's an $800 billion industry, so it means that we're able to scale from Ghana to 25 markets in Africa and into the Caribbean and into Europe. Imagine if you found another player who said, I'm going to be pension focused. Then immediately you are building innovative products for a particular sector and industry. So that's one. But also, another thing that I think is going to change or must change is the fact that it's a very controversial statement I'm about to make, but it's just the truth.
That's Andrew. Go ahead.
With the introduction of CBDCs, what you're going to find is that electronic value will die. Electronic funds transfer, EFTs, is what has become CBDs. CBDs are just going to be EFTs in circulation as issued currency, which means that the concept of electronic value will die. But it's beautiful because it means that settlements will now be not near real time, they'll be 24-hour available. Yeah. It means settlements will go into capital markets. It means that all of a sudden electronic value as EFT would have capital value on them and can be leveraged. It means that we'll open up markets. It means that Africa free trade will be a reality. It means that all of a sudden I don't have to be in Timbuktu anymore. I can just shoot a payment. It's just based on who picks it to settle it and converts it into cash. When that happens, then we'll achieve that global community, that small global community we want to achieve, where trade will boom. So I think that that's where we're going. Now, the poverty that we need to come out of is the barriers we create for ourselves. The last time you and I sat and we talked about grandfathering because the act has just been passed, and we're going to grandfather the act so that grandfather companies into the act so that we can become so-called new fintechs and all of that. We've done that, maybe 3-4 years down the lane or down the line. The next step is for us to now take the next layer of innovation. And that's the next layer we need to make bold decisions around it. But please, let me open the floor.
Open the floor, especially bold decisions. Kwesi, I think you're the next natural step for me to come to. Because I hear Andrew. I mean, if we're going to make sure that CBDCs would enable settlement to be instant, funds are available, what next? Because coming from Second Stack, I mean, this is what you do. What I see you do is more or less having like democratizing what the capital markets, it's like sitting in Ghana and being able to do so much. And for me, that's the capital pool that I think Andrew is referring to. Can you just tell us what you're doing to be sure that we can change this narrative in looking at creating that wealth? Because that's what I hear, whether it's sectorial or intentionality around creating wealth for Africa.
Yeah, thanks. So I think just to piggyback on what Andrew was saying, there's so much for us in Africa. We have so many opportunities, there's so much money. I think back 10 years ago in the last decade, there's been like 90 billion plus raised in capital equity markets, 250 billion plus on debt capital markets. But what happens to that cash? Like everything is very siloed. So where a company like Second Stacks comes into the equation is we're building technology to make sure that anybody, any individual can access this cash eventually. We started this journey by enabling the local dealing members. So I guess like the investment bankers here who are currently trading in other African countries. But that process takes, about 7 to 10 days. And there's so much risk that happens to that. So many blockers that are associated with that as well. So what's happening 7 to 10 days with our technology, you are able to easily do that in 3 days. And I think what it does is just expands the availability of cash, of equity. I mean, like if you think about what's going on in Ghana now, unfortunately, with people whose money are tied up, right? If I had that money, I can easily invest in Nigeria, I can easily invest in Kenya or South Africa. But unfortunately, we don't have those avenues yet. So I think, like, talking about, I won't say we're disrupting, but we're just enabling something that's already there and just trying to make it more efficient.
Thank you very much. Leo, I think I'm naturally coming to you. I know you are restructuring. I know you're doing so much within Airtel Tigo. But when it comes to actually having a range of telecommunication services, I think that's where you come in.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Well, let me build on a little bit what these two guys said.
yeah.
But first, I'm going to back up a step.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we? Well, let me rewrite a story or a saying written by a famous African, Chinua. He wrote, of course, until the lions are able to write their own story. That now has to be changed to until the lions have their own Instagram channel. The world will see Africa from the lines from the Instagram story of the hunter. So, meaning we have to change with the times.
Yeah.
Now I'll say one more thing, and then I'll back up a bit. I keep my eye on the time, of course.
Yes, please.
Africa, we've managed to leapfrog a couple of things that Europe went through in the telecoms world by kind of going over the copper phase of telecoms. That's probably saved us somewhere in the realm of maybe 15 years in general telecoms. I see the same thing coming when we're talking about fintech. Fintech right now, the banks were kind of like Europe was when in the age of copper, and like Andrew went in and found a really nice niche in there. The question comes is how long will that niche last, and I think you're very correct on that. Over the next couple of years, banks and the various other players in the industry will kind of come towards the center point, and we're all going to have to run and find other areas to work with. I'll pick one just as an example, again, to go a little bit back in history. Ghana has, I believe it's 65% of the arable land that is not under current farming. So that's a pretty large proportion. I'm looking forward to Africa to be able to utilize that. But if you look at it, a while ago, that was non-monetizable, non-identifiable, and what you ended up getting was, okay, what the farmer could get on his little piece of land. Now, as we move towards more digitization and more satellite capabilities and drones and GPS over 4G, all of a sudden the farmer can identify this land with a good national registry.
Correct.
You can then monetize that by borrowing against it, so all of a sudden the farmer can start doing a lot of other things. I remember, now at this point it's what, 10, 12 years ago, I don't remember the name of the company we had, but it was on the grounds of Busy Internet, where the farmer had the ability by SMS to say, oh, shall I take my yams over to here, or shall I take them there because I get a little bit more money? And the same thing with a fisherman. Shall I put my fish over here or over there? Well, that's advanced a lot more now in the speed. But in addition, now you can set a drone up to go, so you've monetized your land, now you've bought better seeds, now the drones can tell you in real time, you need to put a little bit more water over here, you need to sprinkle a little bit more fertilizer over there. So we can suddenly double or triple our yield per acre of land with this. So I'm looking into the future of digitalization, and I see that for Africa, we're able to leapfrog a lot of what the rest of the world has been able to do. So we can take advantage of the newest and best technology while modifying it for our own use.
Best technology whilst modifying for our use. Mabna,
Yes.
I think for where you come in terms of being a leading financial service technology provider, what do you see if we're looking through this crystal ball? Can companies like yourselves do to actually enable or to just leapfrog Africa into the next future?
Okay, so first off, I think that without a skilled workforce, all of this wouldn't be very fruitful. Yes, so you realize that in Africa, educational methods are very abstract. We are taught more to do memorization and reproduce that same information instead of problem solving. And so you have most people completing school, and then they come into the real world, and they are not able to apply whatever has been taught to the actual real world. And so I think it's very important that we invest in education and training such that people have the needed skills to be able to participate in the digital economy. I think another thing would be to, so at ITC, for example, I think 2 years ago, we had one of our flagship products, Chango, where we partnered with Coding Caravan, and through this, we were able to develop some program for people, for teenagers, and then for teenagers and kids, to be able to just expose them to the coding environment. And through incentives like this, you get them to spark interest in it, they experiment, and then they take risks. Here in Africa, we treat failure as a big deal, and so most people are not able to innovate. We don't have an enabling environment that allows people to innovate, to take risk, or even to collaborate. And I think these are important things that we need to keep in place. Because if we don't have the skilled people, we can have the infrastructure, we can have the tools, but it's not going to be very useful to us. And I think another thing is the partnerships that we have with, we can have, another point is public and private partnerships that we can have. Yeah. And this is where we create a supportive environment that allows fintechs to be able to operate more easily in this space. Before the regulations came in, it was easy to develop a product and then go to market. And everybody knows that with certain products, you being the market first gives you an added advantage. Yes, but now the space that we have, there are regulations, and it's important that the government sector helps in that space, such that they're able to simplify the regulatory or licensing requirements, or they simplify the regulatory or licensing requirements, or they just reduce the bureaucratic barriers that we currently have. Yes. So I think these are important points that come into play when it comes to changing the narrative for Africa.
Thank you very much, Mabna. I think those are very valid points you raised. When I was trying to do some research for this panel, I was looking at, okay, we're looking at all the tech, the new trends, all the innovation. And then I set my mind, because there was a program I watched a while back looking at when did digitization start in Africa? And in my mind, I was like, okay, let me start doing some research. And I was amazed because I realized that in Cape Town in 1860 was when Siemens actually set their foot. I'm sure everybody is going to Google this to see. And I have facts checked, actually, so I'm very right. So I think Siemens entered Cape Town in South Africa, and that was the first pointer telegraph machine they actually planted to connect Siemens towns within South Africa. So for me, I'm thinking as old as 1860, and we are still having this conversation. So it means that there has to be something, that one thing that's actually going to leapfrog us. So for this next round of question, I'm going to come to Leo first. And I'm just trying to tell you to identify what sort of technology we should be looking at. If Africa wants to actually get to that level where we can start competing with highly digitized countries like Sweden or the Swiss or whichever country we want to benchmark, what is that one technology, Leo, you think we need to focus on?
Very good question. Wow. Two things. First, before we start going to the technology, we've got to start emphasizing on a stronger basis STEM. Sorry, but that's like the base education level that everybody, we need to start getting our young people more involved in STEM. That's because we shouldn't be trying to be equal to Sweden. We're different.
Do it the African way.
We've got to do it the African way. We are different, but we've got to take what we can identify from Europe, China, United States, wherever, and make it our own African way. So if I were to pick one technology which I really view for the future, oddly enough, it wouldn't be from the GSM perspective.
It's fine.
It's blockchain. Now, I say blockchain, I don't mean Bitcoin or any of that stuff. I mean the use of that to, for example, monetize processes like the cocoa process or fintech. I like the cocoa process because by doing that, right now, Cocoa Board finances itself and then tries to finance the farmers. If we could use blockchain properly, the farmer himself can monetize himself, and then fintech can help that whole process along. There's just so many places that I think blockchain will be involved in, as he said, really encompassing the entire fintech supply chain.
I think for me, blockchain, not crypto or not Bitcoin and all of those ones, but I think the whole idea around traceability, having full visibility. And for me, I think that is what we need to start championing, the good things about blockchain and not just the cryptocurrency side. So, Andrew, this is coming to you. What would be that one, I mean, obviously, you're leveraging technology to do a lot, but what's that one thing that you think we can actually do for Africa?
So, Clara, thanks again, and thanks, everybody. I just, for the purpose of our audience or their benefit, I just want to take us back 2 steps on leapfrog.
Okay.
Because we need to really understand what we managed to do that everybody else couldn't do. Maybe what, 20, 30 years back? I came back home in 2006. So let's even just say in 2002, we still had landlines, right?
Yeah.
When we were growing up in 1989, maybe it was 100 landlines to about every 50,000 people. And then maybe 100 landlines to about probably another 1,000 homes, if I'm correct. Then mobile telephony changed. GSM came into being. Well, that evolution meant that for the first time, you can actually have a mobile phone, not even a smartphone. You know, these basic feature phones. So we didn't need to do cable anymore. We didn't need to do fax anymore. We could send short messages across the bridges, across the rivers, across the seas. Do you see what I mean? So that's that leapfrog. But because Africa was so still and behind, it was just the next best thing that would happen to us. We would just naturally evolve from 100 landlines per 50,000 to feature phones that everybody could have. Whether there was power or no power, they found ways to charge their phones, if I'm correct. So that's what we mean by leapfrogging. We've leapfrogged nicely, and we put a lot of technology on the back of that. You can even today check if your medicine is good, if it's a good drug or not. That in itself is improvement. It's a great thing. We monetize the phone. We have digital wallets on the phones and all of that. We didn't put the cat before the horse. We didn't set regulations when we're doing that. The market just naturally evolved. If you ask me, the next thing we need to evolve is artificial intelligence.
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to encourage all of us, let's not worry too much about creating so-called regulations. Let's just create simple market protocols that will enable us to leverage AI to the next level. Because we have all the data. We've collected the data over the last 20, 30 years. Right? We understand when I take my debit card, and this is good to the banks because I've talked about banks for the first time. When I take my debit card and I go to the ATM and I take cash out, and I go to the petrol station and I buy fuel, and I go into Burger King if it's airport shop and I buy a burger, and I go into the airport shop and I buy a drink, you're able to profile my behavioral patterns. An insurance company can decide this is how I live my life. Even the bank itself can decide my needs. You know what a food company can decide how my eating patterns are. So leveraging that, then we start to build new technologies. Like, for example, precision deliveries. I can sit in traffic, and because of artificial intelligence, I can order a Burger King, and it will come to me in exactly 10 seconds or 10 minutes from the nearest Burger King. What did Uber do? Uber did the same thing. Uber just leveraged Google. Before Uber did that, Google went around the world and plotted everything. So I'm just saying that we've reached that point where we just need to be bold enough to take those initiatives. And let's just support it. Maybe governments must create hand-holding platforms that are simple agencies. Because of AI and because of the APIs we've built and all this digitalization, then all of a sudden, we've been talking for years in Ghana about local government, decentralization of local government. We won't have that problem anymore. You know why? Because every municipal can just build an API and monetize and say to yourself, if you live in Aboblosi or if you live in Accra Metro and you're a fintech, you can apply for an API and collect payments on our behalf. Just make sure it goes to our designated account in Bank of Ghana. Do you see? I feel like we need to move, but our ability to move, it depends also on the leadership's willingness to say for the first time that, you know what, 60% of our economy is transactional and they are 18 to 35. So let them lead us and we will guide them. Great banks like GT Bank, when they started, it was started by young people who went to old people and said, be our board members.
And then
that's the narrative we need to change. That's the burden we're sitting on. I mean, Finn is talking about what they do. It literally means I can sit here with these wallets and I can trade across capital markets. I can manage my positions efficiently. So let's start. I think we need to make a call to action from today that from here, this is what we want leadership to do. Take a step back and create discussion protocols that will let us move AI.
I think, Andrew, you have actually just said it, because I think Kwame was supposed to be on this panel, right? Yes. And for me, that actually is what we need to start talking about. Open banking, open application. You know, it's one topic that we have to, because that's the only way we can unlock everything else. Because you're all sitting on tons and tons of data. I mean, you heard it from Andrew. I mean, in terms of footprints, electronic footprint, I mean, I can take a day and plot everything I do, and you can actually see what I do every month, what I pay for at this point in time every month, what you eat, what you drink. In fact, when you don't eat, it's easy because you can see I haven't paid for any food.
I'm broke.
Or I'm broke because there's no
give me
money.
a loan.
Thank you very much. So I think for me, that's the power. And I think the panel before this, there was that discussion about mobile money in some countries taking off before regulation, or in some cases, regulation before. But I think we need to make sure, even though, yes, I agree, it's ethical, we just have to make sure that it's ethical AI, which is good. I mean, we've got so many other platforms. Google AI is here. We've got others that are actually already in there.
Some of them died, Clara.
They do.
Some of them died.
Some of them did. But I think that you are right, Andrew. I think we need to have some form of, maybe a framework, not necessarily a regulation, but just some sort of a framework that would allow us to sort of ensure that we use AI to the benefit. Yes, Andrew, you want to add something?
Please, because of this conversation.
Yes.
Just 1 second.
Tell me.
So yesterday, same time yesterday, I was in Israel, at the central bank. Very wonderful conversation. The guy is talking about open banking, excitement. He's showing us all the beautiful things they're doing. Then I said, hold on. Tell me about open banking. We have open banking in Ghana. If anybody who's on GIPS here, Madam, I'm sure you're on GIPS.
Yes.
You're able to validate an account number, are you not?
Yeah.
You're able to put a phone number in and you'll be able to get the name of the account. Thanks to His Excellency Vice President, we can even now get the digital address on top of that. That's open banking. So we're doing open banking already. Why are we letting the world tell us about open banking when we know about open banking? We started talking about open banking 10 years ago. If you come to ZPay, look, in a single transaction, I can validate you on all the networks, including the bank. So it really comes back to the conversation, Clara. We just need to take a step back, sit down and say to ourselves, what are the dividends we built? Who are the key proponents of those dividends, and understand it? Then we back them and say, guys, take us, lead us, and we'll direct you.
I fully agree with you. I mean, Chrissy, this is definitely the way we have to go, because that allows you, even for you, I mean, how else are you going to be able to connect to all of these capital markets in all of the countries? If you're going to look at capital markets in Nigeria, you're going to look at in Kenya, in South Africa, I mean, you just need one API, or even just one, and you are connected. Maybe connecting to the New York Stock Exchange is just another one API, but it's easier. But these are the things we need to do. And for me, this is not rocket science. I mean, it's just ensuring that this is where we are, and this is just that one last step we need to take to be able to unleash this potential. And can you just imagine the power of sitting here? You can even just maximize your own investment portfolio. I mean, if stocks are not doing so well in Ghana, and I have full visibility from one click of a button, I see what stocks are doing in South Africa, in Kenya, in Nigeria. I mean, it's diversifying my own portfolio and maximizing my returns. So I think this is where we all need to come in. And I think we need a call of action, Uncle Ken. This time around, I mean, it's a pledge. Because we had this discussion last year, and we are here this year. And these are very valid points. And I think this is what MT4D is supposed to do. We can start lobbying and start making sure that some of these things actually gain traction and not just another talk shop and then nothing else happens. So please, this is one request. For the next one, we would actually give an update on what we have discussed this time. I think we need a round of applause for this. And doing that. So please, Kwesi, I mean, just briefly, because we are running out of time, but perhaps from your experience, if you can just share one good advantage in terms of what we can do, that's something that would go into the call of action in your area.
Yeah,
then
very
I'll
quickly,
come to Mabna.
But it's funny because I will piggyback off of what Andrew is saying, because I think there's a lot of synergy there. Yeah. So AI, just as he said, but when I think of like trading in capital markets or even just like buying airtime or data, I think of just being able to send a text message to say, buy me 50 CDs of Airtel or MTN, and then, ask like, which network are you on? And then, I just respond, like 5 seconds, this is done. Compared to like USSD, which is really slow and doesn't always work. But on the capital market side, so right now, everything is on a system. I have to go look at what's going on and decide which security I'm interested in, and then make a purchase. But imagine a world where, in the morning, because we're sitting in Ghana, Kenya is 3 hours ahead of us, but you get a text message saying, hey, Safaricom is trading really well today. I see your portfolio, you have about 1,000 shares. Do you want to buy another 500 or something? And then you just say yes, and then the transaction goes through. And on the backside of that, you have machine learning where, all the transactions that are coming through, you can understand what those transactions are doing, see what your clients are doing, see what each of the investment banks are doing, aggregate all that and build products off of that and make suggestions to your clients. I think that's like the perfect world. I'm looking forward to seeing that at some point.
We will definitely see that. Just so to wrap up, I think the last question I have is something that's very important. We've been talking about vulnerable groups, we've been talking about, and I think there was a lot of, when we saw the GFSMA data that was shared, you could see there was so much potential when it comes to youth. I mean, Andrew, the project we have on currently now, funded by the EU under the Green Project, you can tell we're very big on youth. And we've got the data. We see the data. In fact, it's interesting because we sit down and we look at what's the pattern. We can see the pattern of youth. Are they saving? If they're saving, why are they saving? If they are not saving, why are they not saving? I mean, we've had this discussion about the youth and remittances. We always want to see, are they actually, and when I say youth, I mean between 18 and 35. If I compare the behaviors of an 18 to 35-year-old, even looking at remittances, or compare that to a 50 to 60-year-old, you would see some differences. But I keep thinking, what are we going to do to ensure that they're just not users of technologies just to go on TikTok and Facebook and Snapchat and all of that? But what can we do? Tangible things we can do. We keep saying we've got the data. Are we going to design products for youth, innovate around them? What specifically can we do? Because even in Ghana, 37% of our population are youth. I think about, for me, that already, if not more. Group. Yeah, it's the largest group with the last population census with it. So just by way of wrapping up, because I know soon I'm going to be told it's time, and I just want to allow for one more. Just let's use this last to just...
Time doesn't count.
Time is actually, the monitor is actually gone up, so, and I can see everybody is actually very, very in tuned in, so that's fine. But let's just wrap up here looking at what we can do for the youth. And I would start with Mabna. Mabna, from where you sit with IT Consortium, I mean, what is your focus? Are you intentional about developing solutions to target the youth and make them very productive users of technology?
Okay, so at IT Consortium, we have an innovations and research unit. And what this unit does is we take students from universities from level 200 to final year, And then we give them the ability to solve problems, difficult problems. It could be even internal problems that we are putting out there. And through this, we are giving them the ability to be creative. We are giving them the ability to think outside the box. And most importantly, to apply whatever it is they are learning in school to what it is on the ground. Another thing is when it comes to the youth, we have, like you mentioned, when you check the population pyramid, most of the base of the population pyramid has the youth being the highest on there. And so it's very important that when we are developing solutions, we think about their youth, their usage, and then fitness for use. Because you can have a product which is innovative, but then it goes out there, it's not being very useful. And that's why it's important that during your planning stage, during your project gathering, etc., you incorporate certain things such that they are not just people who are using the application. Because having innovations is not just bringing out new solutions and then having new people on board. You also need to be able to retain the people who are on the platform. So these are some of the things that we do at ITC.
Thank you. Kwesi, I'll come to you. What are we doing to ensure that the youth is engaged and engaged productively?
So I think my take on this is slightly different. So what I've realized since being back in Ghana is that we have really good engineers, we have really good developers in the country. Yeah. I don't think we are, or we and they themselves as individuals are harnessing their potential to the highest capabilities. But I also think that's something that goes hand in hand with that is also building soft skills. In my interactions with them, I realized that that is something that could improve. So I see that people out there are trying to build maybe like the next Instagram, the next Facebook. But what I always do is encourage them to look around you, like what's around you, what issues are here that you can solve. In our example, our business was born like when the MTN IPO was coming out, but anyone who was outside of Ghana who wanted to participate didn't have an option. So look at the real world problems that are around you and then try to build a solution around that rather than looking outside and saying, hey, let me try to replicate this.
We've got too many problems, and I think we've got solutions we can actually all figure out. Leo, final words, what are we going to do about making them productive?
You gave me a chance to talk about Airtel Tigo then.
Please, you have.
One of the important things for our youth is for them to be able to have the tools necessary to be able to advance and to do their jobs. Looking around at where we are versus 20 years ago, probably the most important tool about everything that we've talked about here is the ability to have access to high-speed data. That's everything that Andrew talked about, everything Kwesi talked about, you talked about. From our perspective, one of the basic tools that we've got to be able to give everybody is continuing and broadening access to high-speed data. There's a lot more complex things you can do, but it's like sending a carpenter into the woods with no tools. You can see the trees, you can use Instagram, but frankly, using Instagram isn't what we're after. Yeah. We're after people that can create content, that can use this content, that understand the content, that understand the big data in order to make the AI work, et cetera. So I'm very happy that Airtel Tigo is going to be part of the information pipeline of the future.
Wow. Thank you very much, Andrew. Leo, Andrew, final words, please. What are we going to do? I mean, we've had this discussion, and we always look at the numbers. I mean, we've got the data to show for that. What do you think we have to do to make sure that we have a very productive youth?
Well, so I think I'll take it from what Finn was saying, which is that everybody wants to replicate what somebody else has done. But frankly, in this world, if you don't solve a problem, you're not going to survive. America is big because it solves problems. Even Israel is big because it solves its problems, right? I think that our youth must be taught to solve problems. If we did that, the ecosystem will survive and will be stronger. How are we going to do that is the next conversation. What we've done as a company is take a lead in that. So we partner with University of Ghana Business School. We've actually set up an innovation hub, which should open probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And the objective is to just allow the young ones to think and try and solve a problem. That's all we need to do, Clara. And in doing that, we need to back it up with the big data and the AI. And as we do that, we'll build protocols. After all, this fintech we talk about, we started and we developed protocols that some of them have become industry standards today. Let's just take that step. The next thing I would ask, if the powers are here, and I think they are here, is that
we'll carry the message to the powers that be.
Hear us, listen to us. We mean no harm. It's our destiny.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is for us, because you'll be gone. A man at 90 says, if God gives me tomorrow. A young kid at 18 says, I'll do this tomorrow. The difference is clear. So listen to us, allow us, and guide us where we're wrong, because we want to build tomorrow now. We're in that age. We're in the age we want to create now. Otherwise, what it is that you are keeping us out of the world. We are building a small village.
When you can have
a bigger world that we can
world.
be proud of. So that's my closing piece. In terms of my crystal ball, like I said, electronic value will die. Retail banking died. I told you it's going to die. Electronic value will die. EFTs backed by CBDs will be the new thing that will make mobile money and that whole monetization of the fintech ecosystem thrive. And that I see taking over in the next 5 years. If it doesn't happen in Ghana first, it will happen in Africa. But my prayer that it happens in Ghana first.
And then Ghana takes it to Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I have room for one question. If there's one question, one contribution from anywhere else, or if there's anything on the social media channel, but I think everybody is tired now, and it's been a pleasure hosting this panel. I think if it's anything to take home with, it's the fact that we know what the future looks like. We know where we need to focus on. We need to take the youth along with us. We need to look at how to actually have ethical AI. We need to be able to leverage on that to create the value we want to see. And I think the whole idea is about actually making sure that we've got the use cases that we're going to develop to make sure that Africa would leapfrog into the joy and the prosperity that Africa deserves. I think we've put in place the baseline. Yes. We've looked at the technology, it's there. We've seen the data. We've looked at the fact that in terms of coverage, it's not bad after all. Even when we look at inclusion, whether it's mobile financial services, it's a financial service, I think for now, we've actually set the right platform. And all we need to do is sort of build on top of that. And for me, looking through the future and looking through the keyhole, I see Africa rising, and I see the youth leading this charge, because now they realize and they see the need to ensure that they are skilled. I see STEM is picking up. I see science and technology is actually one that's leading the way. And for what Andrew said, that is actually makes or gives me more joy. And the work we do is the fact that it's time for Africa to start linking our academic institutions to industry. And that's something Andrew mentioned, being sectorial. And I think being intentional about that. We can't just innovate anywhere. It has to be focused, it has to be smart, and I think if we can do that and support academia and support the youth and make sure that we give them the tools that they need and the infrastructure that they need, ensure that we take connectivity to the last mile, looking through the keyhole, in 2 years, Africa would definitely be a different story and would have cause to celebrate. Ladies and gentlemen, let me draw the curtain on today's program and to say a very big thank you to all of you and big thank you to my panelists. Till we meet at the next MT4D in 2024, I say good evening and have a good night. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for Clara and her team. That was beautiful.
Yeah,
let's grab a photo quickly before we call it a day. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have been paying close attention to the board behind us, you realize that today is just day one. If you enjoyed today's session, please tell somebody, invite someone else and tell them that there's another session tomorrow at the Accra Digital Center. Starts at exactly 9 o'clock. Please make time, be there. If you enjoyed today's session, just know that tomorrow is another time. I would like to give the last word to Mr. Kenneth Ashigbe. A round of applause for him. And then...
Well, thank you very much, and thank you all for staying up till this time. And as you know, we have a cocktail starting right after now. If you think today has been great, tomorrow is even going to be greater. Tomorrow we are going to the Accra Digital Center, the home of digital. And we are tomorrow going to start with a workshop by Bank of Ghana on governance. We'll deal with the issues of data protection. We'll deal with the issues of gender gap that will be delivered, moderated by Clarissa. We would also deal with the issue of funding within this ecosystem. And then we'll have a slightly different closing panel, but also a very high energy closing panel that would look to inspire all of us within the times that we are in. So I urge all of you to come. Please, when you're coming, come with your tags for tomorrow. It's the same tags that we're going to be using for tomorrow. And as we've said, we're planning for MT4D 2024. But the most important thing, as Clarissa said, is that we need to take at least one thing or two that we would be able to follow through so that come next year we'll be able to report that we dealt with this and it's been dealt with. And then we're moving on to the next thing. So see you at the Stanbic cocktail session outside. God richly bless us all. Thank you.
Uncle Ken, we started with a prayer, so I think we should just close with a prayer as well, right?
So a short prayer. We pray in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God our Father, we thank you for day one. It's been great. We commit day two into your hands. We pray for traveling mercies even as we leave here. We ask all of this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you all so much. So we all move to the foyer and we join the Stanbic Bank in the team as we have a very beautiful cocktail session. My name is Anefi Jatin and I've been your MC for day one. See you all tomorrow. Good evening.